Chapter 158. Roars, explosions, the monster's screams, and the boy's warm breath. These were all Xia Luote felt at this moment. Although they were in the middle of a battle, such a close posture still made the girl's heart flutter. But soon, Xia Luote came back to her senses. The huge commotion caused the two sides to stop fighting. Xia Luote leaned in Luo Ye's arms and opened her eyes. She found that the curse power in front of her had almost disappeared. Seeing such a good opportunity, the girl's eyes widened. She decisively moved the trigger, but this time, she aimed at the boy in her arms. Xia Luote? Trust me. Luo Ye, who was shocked, looked into the girl's eyes and nodded involuntarily. As the girl assured him, the trigger was pulled and a magnificent white light flashed. Luo Ye's vision was filled with light at this moment. When he could see clearly again, the surrounding scenery had completely changed. He looked around and saw the sailors who were equally confused. This child isn't the one just now? How did she get here? Before the sailors finished speaking, the trigger was pulled again in the distance. Suddenly, a figure flashed above Luo Ye. Xia Luote descended from the sky and slapped Luo Ye, who was about to get up, back onto the floor. Puff. Cough, cough. Xia Luote's good figure made a contribution at this moment. Luo Ye, who had the air in his lungs squeezed, was fine after coughing twice. Before the two boys and girls who had reunited could celebrate, the sailors rushed over, giving Luo Ye a fright. Wait, you don't have to say, we understand. What's going on? What do you understand? Luo Ye, who was anxious to clarify his position, was stunned when he saw the sailors rushing over turn around and protect the two of them with their weapons. They looked even more anxious than Luo Ye. Child, do you know how to sail? Huh? Captain Jeff's eyes lit up as he asked Xia Luote, who was behind Luo Ye. The girl couldn't help but be stunned. Seeing this, Jeff suddenly understood and hurriedly pointed at the ship's doctor and yelled, "Quick! Keep Ruwei alive for me. At the very least, we should teach this child the electric fence. Whether we can survive or not depends on this." The captain explained the situation in a few words. Luo Ye, who heard that the battleship was about to self-destruct, was dumbfounded. Xia Luote hurried to the side of the dying vice-captain and began to concentrate on learning the basic operations of this behemoth. Fuck. Learning how to operate a warship now? Are you fucking kidding me? Luo Ye couldn't fully accept the situation until now. He couldn't understand why there was such a job. Although Xia Luote was talented and intelligent, that was business. This was not the same as engineering, right? Although he was cursing wildly in his heart, reality was still reality. The battle cries continued, and people or monsters fell every second. Luo Ye looked at the battlefield filled with battle cries and gritted his teeth. He grabbed a sword from the ground and rushed forward. Captain Jeff, can we only survive if Xia Luote activates that electric fence? That's too risky. Is there no other way? There is, but it's impossible, unless we can drive all the fish on the deck down and occupy the ship's railing. The grey-haired captain stretched his hand forward and deflected all the high-pressure water arrows shot by the scaly men. He naturally knew that the success rate on Xia Luote's side was not high, but compared to taking back the ship's railing, the girl's side had a higher chance. It was obvious that if the crew was strong enough to drive the enemy off, the St. Paul wouldn't be in such a situation now. Whether it was impact or explosive power, the sailors who had been fighting for a long time no longer had it. Is it impossible? That's not necessarily true. The black-haired young man muttered to himself. He stroked his long sword as if he was sharpening the dazzling cold blade. A red light flashed in his golden eyes, and the remaining curse power burst out like a python, turning into red thunder roaring in the air. Boom! The scattered and exploding lightning was like knives and swords, and within the rolling thunder, there seemed to be countless warriors roaring and roaring. The powerful presence attracted the attention of all the sailors. Jeff's eyes widened. He never thought that in such a desperate situation, there would be one miracle after another. The group skill was a legendary ability in Xi Ye's chaotic country. It was said that the person who had it would be chosen by the heavens and be born as a king. In the eyes of the crowd, the young man covered in thunder and lightning was angry but indifferent as ice. The red thunder crown crowned him. At this moment, he seemed to see the proud prince in the palace of the holy capital, turning his face to him under the rainy night and showing him an unruly smile. Chapter 159. What was the most handsome thing in a man's fantasy? Luo didn't know about other people, but in his mind, there were only two things. Cannons, giant ships. Then there was the sea of stars, dreams, and faraway places. Oh, fuck them. The cheers of the crowd were deafening, like a match that ignited the dreams of the black-haired youth buried in his previous life. The caliber was justice, and the range was truth. Luo, senior disciple of the Cannon Tower Church, joined the battle. Luo, who was quickly infected by the atmosphere, shouted with the crowd. Captain Jeff saw this and laughed loudly. He was very familiar with this reaction. Every young person who saw the main cannons of the Golden Ship Regiment for the first time would fall into this fanaticism. Some people would even worship the cannon at the bow of the ship. The enemies in the sea where the giant octopus monster was located had been annihilated by the Golden Ship Regiment. This powerful attack had completely changed the situation of the battle. Without the octopus monster, the seafolk had lost the means to directly threaten the ship. They had no choice but to retreat. The monsters in the sea dived into the depths of the sea and disappeared without a trace. Seeing this, the crew sighed in relief. The joy of surviving a life-and-death situation made everyone lose control. They all laughed and shouted as if they were venting their emotions. Xia Luote, you're a genius. In the midst of the uproar of the crowd, Luo rushed to the red-haired girl and gave her a big hug. In the face of Luo's excited and unhesitant intimate action, Xia Luote couldn't be as calm as he was during the battle. You, what are you doing? Let go. The girl, who was originally exhausted due to the overdraft of her curse power, suddenly felt her body temperature rise in the boy's arms. Her face was red, but she weakly patted Luo's back. However, this slight resistance had no effect. It didn't even attract Luo's attention. After a round of close contact, the boy looked at his system and checked the evaluation. Evaluation, average, 56. Sure enough, the damage of the allies this time was also counted in the evaluation. Luo looked at the evaluation that rose to 56 points and was very excited. Last time in the historical fragment, Luo had to personally fight with the talents for the evaluation. How could it be as good as bringing people to fight together with him now? And from the perspective of survival, it was a great thing to have allies around him. The black-haired boy was happy while thinking about the reason. He felt that this should be because this battle was a battle between humans and foreign races, so he could gain so much when he led the humans' counterattack. You're too close. Sorry. Charlotte's voice was like a mosquito's protest. The youth recovered and hurriedly separated. Roja let go of her hand and looked at the girl with tears in her eyes. Charlotte bit her lips and stared at him. This was the first time she scolded him since the butterfly incident. Stupid. Idiot. Unbelievable. I was wrong. I was just a little excited when I saw how good your cannon skills were. Luo was embarrassed as he muttered to himself. At the same time, the doubts in his heart grew stronger. He could not figure out how Xia Luote learned how to pilot such a super battleship in such a short time. However, this was not the main point now. Oh, is that so? Don't think that I didn't see what you did. You didn't believe that I could succeed at all and rushed out yourself, right? This. The black-haired boy looked away guiltily when his thoughts were exposed. Xia Luote saw this and glared at him fiercely. The girl recalled how Luo looked when he led all the humans to charge. Her heart was in turmoil. Even now, she could not calm down. Xia Luote had never seen the boy at that time. In her impression, Luo was more like a bookish businessman. However, at that moment, Xia Luote saw the shadow of a hero in him. Heroes could make any girl's heart flutter. That was why there were many beauties around heroes since ancient times. Xia Luote was no exception. However, other than her heart fluttering, the The girl also had an unknown worry in her heart. Why did he rush so far forward? What if he was injured? What if he was hit by a water arrow? Why was a level 5 source ranker at the front while Captain Jeff, a level 3 source ranker, followed behind him? Looking at her companion who was in the limelight, not only was he not happy, but he was worried. This was the first time Xia Luote experienced this feeling. She did not know why. She only knew that it was a great test for her heart. She did not want to experience it a second time. I am afraid that Mr. Deputy Captain's injuries are serious and can't hold on until I teach you the technique. It's double insurance, haha. Chimph, clumsy lie. I can't be bothered with you. Xia Luote waved her hand and the battleship began to leave the battle area in the same direction according to the instructions broadcast to the entire ship. Once they left the battle area, it also meant that this encounter was completely over. Chapter 160. Vincent. You are one of Vincent's men? In front of the St. Paul's captain's room, a tall brown-haired beauty looked at the black-haired, golden-eyed young man in astonishment. What's going on? The flood has washed over the Dragon King's temple. Family? Wait, that's not right. Vincent is only 20 this year. Why haven't I heard that he has a younger brother? Furthermore, if you are a member of the Ackett family, you shouldn't have come. I have already sent a letter to Vincent. There is no need for him to send anyone else. Your Majesty, are you referring to the letter that states that you will arrive at the Twin Horns port in the middle of April? UN. You have seen the letter. Of course. In order to help you get through this difficult time, the necessary information is necessary. The head of the family has already shown me the letter. Under the astonished gaze of Isha Bela, Luo Ye reached into his pocket with a calm expression and took out a golden sealed letter. Then, he transformed on the spot. Your Majesty the Queen, this is a keepsake that my brother gave me before I came here. However, due to the fact that the Twilight Sage Association's delivery involves the attributes of space and time, this letter is as fragile as if it has been placed there for hundreds of years. Please be careful. As Luo Ye spoke, he passed the letter to Isha Bela with both hands. Looking at the woman, his eyes were filled with smiles and friendliness, as though he already knew of the relationship between her and his brother. The brown-haired queen was taken aback. She hesitated for a moment before accepting the letter. Why is this fellow so good at deceiving others? Behind Luo Ye, the brown-haired young lady was trying her best to control her facial expression. She was speechless to the extreme. She was impressed by the young man's ability to link everything together and treat it as a stitched monster. This fellow. It is fortunate that I was prepared. Otherwise, I might have been deceived by him as well. The young mistress was unconsciously rejoicing. On the other hand, the queen caressed the familiar letter and observed the brittle paper in astonishment. Just as the saying goes, no matter how one tries to hide it, the traces of time cannot be erased. Buckwheat paper is tough and durable. It would probably take hundreds of years for the paper to become so brittle. I didn't expect such a thing to happen. Was it a scholar who sent you here? Isha Bela's doubts were mostly eliminated by the evidence, but she still didn't completely let down her guard. Faced with a new problem, Luo Ye pondered for a moment and shook her head. My apologies, Your Majesty. Although I know that the ones who sent us here are the members of the Twilight Sage Association, I am not one of them. I have only heard about them from my elder brother. Thus, I do not know who they are. What does he look like? I'm not sure. In fact, we can only see a blurry figure. In the face of Her Majesty's interrogation, Luo Ye answered with a troubled expression. However, not only did this I don't know answer not arouse Isha Bela's suspicion, but it also made her completely believe in Luo Ye. The Dusk Sages Association was an organization where all the powerful individuals in the world were united for a common goal. As outstanding individuals or even rulers of various domains, the members of the Dusk Sages Association were likely to have grudges against each other. In order to not affect their work efficiency, none of the members of the Dusk Sages Association showed themselves. Even their voices were masked. Scholar was a senior member of the Twilight Sage Association. Her supernatural powers were outstanding, but she was also extremely cautious. If Luo Yue revealed her appearance, Isha Bela would probably start a war without hesitation. Luo Yue's suspicions were basically eliminated. Isha Bela then turned her gaze to Xia Luote, whose hair color was similar to hers. The black-haired young man's heart skipped a beat when he saw this, but he didn't expect that. Xia Luote was even better at acting than him. Realizing that Isha Bela was looking at her, Xia Luote paused for a moment. The next moment, tears suddenly welled up in her eyes. The reddish-brown-haired young woman trembled as she stretched out her arm and opened her palm. In the center of her palm, a sparkling gemstone trigger was placed flat on her palm, shining brightly. "This is my keepsake, Your Majesty Isha Bela. Please help the Sorophia family on account of our relationship as fellow humans." What? Faced with the crying young woman and all sorts of information, Isha Bela was rather confused. Xia Luote sobbed as she told the story to the queen's astonished and confused gaze. It was 200 years ago when the Sorophia family broke away from the human army and migrated to the south. Some of the weaker members of the Sorophia family fell behind and didn't manage to catch up in time. As a result, they were captured by the Ostan Empire and forced to join the empire. They were then assigned to be under the rule of the Milton family. The Highland Elf bloodline was naturally sensitive to money. The Milton family took advantage of this to force the Sorophia family to do business in order to earn money. However, due to historical reasons, the Sorophia family was discriminated against as traitors and lived in persecution and suffering. Family curses and bloodline curses were continuously broken for more than 200 years, causing the Sorophia family to be unable to fight back. The current head of the Sorophia family, Bruce, was deeply worried about this. However, he accidentally heard about the existence of the Sorophia kingdom from the Akut family. For the future of the Sorophia family, he ordered his daughter, Xia Luote, to bring the family's only ancestral secret treasure, the stone trigger, as a keepsake and ask for help from the Sorophia royal family. As this mission required a Highland Elf bloodline holder, Xia Luote volunteered herself. With the combination of the two, she was finally qualified to follow Luo Yue and be sent here by the curses. She also succeeded in meeting her own people. Xia Luote told the story with tears in her eyes. Her sincere complaints attracted the attention of everyone nearby. Not to mention Isha Bela, if it wasn't for the fact that Luo Yue knew about Xia Luote's background, even Luo Yue would have believed her. How could this person be so good at lying? Luo Yue looked at the crying young woman and sighed in her heart, the same as what Xia Luote had 5 minutes ago. However, she had to admit that the duet of this unscrupulous fiancé couple was indeed effective. "I didn't expect that the people who were separated back then actually survived." Chapter 161. What was the background of Vincent and Isha Bela's era? Luo Yue didn't have time to flip through the book because he entered the historical period too suddenly. But with his excellent memory of historical records, he could vaguely recall the general trajectory of Vincent's life. It was the 261st year of the Third Era. This year was a familiar year in the eyes of future historians because this was the period of the First War of the Mutated Species. In the eyes of the later generations, this period of time was terrifying and dark. Everyone who read history books focused their attention on the eastern region and the subsequent large-scale human battles. No one cared about the Kingdom of Sophia in the distant south. In the subsequent wars, human literature was destroyed by the flames of war. Not even 1 out of 10 remained. This could be said to be the reason why there were almost no records of the Kingdom of Sophia in the future. But today, Luo Yue learned something else and discovered that the Kingdom of Sophia, or at least Queen Isha Bela, didn't seem to be so far away from the world and enjoyed a paradise alone. 6 disasters. Sister Isha Bela, what is that? Oh, Vincent didn't tell you, right? Well, he's very tight-lipped. The brown-haired woman listened to Xia Luote's question and said so. Then she looked at the 2 people in front of her and smiled helplessly. Actually, in theory, I should keep it a secret, but because of our race, everyone on the ship basically already knows, so I'm too lazy to keep it a secret. Luo Yue, you have already read the letter before, right? Aren't you curious about what the egg is? Wait, don't tell me. That's right. The Golden Ship received a commission from the Sage Society to transport the 6 disasters egg. The brown-haired queen said so. She turned her head and looked at the white sail outside the window. She raised her hand and took a sip of wine. After pondering for a long time, she suddenly asked a question in a heavy voice. You too, do you believe in fate? Fate? Hearing Ishar Bela's question that came out of nowhere, Luo Ya and Xia Luote were both stunned. The black-haired boy was hesitant about this mysterious question. The girl who had more right to speak thought for a while and slowly said, "The scope of fate is too broad. It has different meanings depending on the target." What kind of fate do you mean by fate? What kind of fate? If I have to say, it's humans. Huh? Ishar Bela's answer made Xia Luote's eyes widened in confusion. Luo Ya was also confused and couldn't help but complain in his heart. What's going on? Fate can't satisfy you two anymore? Is the prophecy of the apocalypse? Luo Ya's face twitched when he thought of a long series of numbers such as 1999-2012. He suddenly felt that Ishar Bela's words were a little unreliable. Although the Highland Elves were good at divination and were rumored to be able to observe fate, in fact, it was difficult to accurately observe the fate of a single person in this world with extraordinary power, let alone the fate of the entire human race. In the end, fate was like a thread. The most terrible thing was variables. The fate of the entire human race was too many variables. It was impossible to control it. Wouldn't the result be a fantasy? Luo Ya complained in his heart. Xia Luote, who knew the industry, was also puzzled. Ishar Bela looked at the two who wanted to say something but didn't care. She shook her wine glass and asked the second question. It has been more than 200 years since we moved to the new world from the west. The current human world has just recovered from the disaster. A new world is being developed and a new order is being established. The great catastrophe at the end of the Second Age was ultimately defeated by the tenacity of the human race. But have you ever thought about one thing? In the distant past, in the ancient times that can only be glimpsed from myths and legends, where did the powerful civilizations with extraordinary power go? This. Ishar Bela's words made Luo Ya and Xia Luote speechless. Indeed, the existing human families with ancient bloodlines were quite powerful. People like Heathcliff could even lead and establish a country. Then, the question was, where were the real angels? It wasn't just the angels. Putting aside the giants, who were obviously barbaric races, the Highland Elves had many unique spells and technology. These pioneers established a brilliant civilization far before the human race. But where did they go now? Without a doubt, Luo Ya and Xia Luote couldn't answer this question. Perhaps no one could. Ishar Bela obviously didn't want to ask them for the answer to this eternal mystery. She just took a sip of wine and told them some of the facts she knew. Destroyed, all destroyed. Those once glorious civilizations collapsed in the long river of time. There are many reasons, such as war, disease, environmental changes, and man-made disasters. Civilization is a very interesting thing. It can be very strong sometimes, but it can be very fragile sometimes. Fate is a fair thing sometimes. No matter if it's an extraordinary race or a human, no matter if it's strong or weak, the future is unpredictable. It's just that, the scales of fate will occasionally be moved by some dark hands. Ishar Bela looked at the two children opposite her and revealed a fact in a calm voice. Some civilizations were destroyed, and what killed them was the 6 disasters, left behind by Mother Goddess. Destroyed. Mother Goddess. Chapter 162. Bloodline Reconstruction? What the hell was that? And what exactly was the crown stone? Luo Ya was dumbfounded as he looked at the inexplicable notifications in the system. He had never thought that this disaster, which was related to the rise and fall of human civilization, would have something to do with his bloodline. Ding, bloodline reconstruction successful. Detected crown stone variant. Initiating preliminary evaluation. System evaluation, absorbable. Recommended absorption level, A, based on the host's specific situation, the variant's growth rate will be evaluated. Recommended absorption level, B+, warning. Warning. The host's level is not up to standard. There is a certain risk in absorbing. The system has activated partial absorption support. Estimated cost, 300,000 gold coins. Due to the host's insufficient balance, the system has activated the loan function. Not the first loan. Interest rate, 10% per month. With a 10% monthly interest rate, you will be able to borrow 300,000 gold coins. Yes/no, Luo Ya was dazzled by the long string of data. Countless thoughts began to appear in his mind, but there was only one word that stood out the most. Loan. Another loan. When he saw that the system had started to run out of money again, Luo Ya felt that something was wrong. He didn't think that it would actually give him a loan, and the interest rate. 10% per month. 30,000 gold coins in a month. Even robbing people wouldn't be that fast, right? What kind of operation was this? I'm borrowing money from myself. Isn't the interest rate too high? My territory's capital probably won't be able to support this kind of interest. The cost is equal to the benefits. The probability of the crown stone appearing is extremely low, so this opportunity cannot be missed. Successfully absorbing it will greatly increase the host's strength, but powerful skills have a certain degree of side effects. Please make your choice. The system's words made Luo Ya grit his teeth and fall silent. There was no doubt that this loan and the price he would have to pay would be enormous, but just as the system said, this was also a great opportunity. Frozen Earth Creator. Although Luo Ya didn't know the relationship between this terrifying monster and the crown origin substance, he didn't need to think to know that this civilization destroyer's power was shocking. Come to think of it, although the French system's replies were infuriating, it had only allowed Luo Ya to take out a loan once. That time, it was the awakening of his bloodline, which almost changed Luo Ya's life. Then, this time, Luo Ya's expression changed. He turned his head and looked at the girl who was talking to Isabella. The uneasiness in his heart made him frown. Luo Ya felt guilty that he had involved Xia Luote in this historical episode. Originally, with his current strength and skills, Luo Ya felt that he had the ability to protect the girl. However, after hearing Isabella's words and seeing the Frozen Earth Creator, Luo Ya wasn't so sure anymore. Because he came from the future, he knew that Twinhorn Harbor was frozen. In this era, Twinhorn Harbor was still a good harbor. However, in the future, it would become a cursed harbor that would freeze forever. Countless explorers would be forever buried in that terrifying world of ice and snow, leaving behind only cursed legends. Chapter 163. Inside the cabin, the crisp sound of gemstone triggers rang out continuously. The shattered gemstones turned into golden dust that hit Luo Ya's body and gradually dissipated. Xia Luote's frozen earthmaker's surroundings had turned into a sea of fire under the bombardment of gemstones. Layers of heat waves slightly recovered Luo Ya's condition, but these flames only lasted for a moment and extinguished themselves a few seconds later. The flames of the curse power were like candles in the wind under the even stronger chill power of the curse power. However, Milady didn't care about this at all. More than a dozen gemstones were enough to warm Luo Ya up a little. Her real trump card wasn't here. Boil. Seal. The reddish-brown-haired girl's emerald eyes glowed brightly. Her bloodline surged as she pointed the trigger forward. Her majestic aura was like that of a queen commanding thousands of troops. Under Xia Luote's command, the golden liquid metal soldiers responded. Buzz. Violent buzzing and vibrations began to emanate from the hull of the ship. The golden liquid army rushed out of the crisscrossing pipes and charged towards the ice. The sailors on the ship looked at each other, not knowing what was going on. At the same time, Isabella also made her move. I see. Is this the power of the Akut family's bloodline? It's amazing. No wonder the Sage Society sent you here. Then, let me, your elder sister, help you a little. Milady Queen looked at the boy and girl below. The last doubt in her heart was completely eliminated. She laughed heartily, and the statue of the goddess of fate that Luoya was familiar with suddenly appeared behind her. The only difference was that the golden statue of Isha was much clearer. Scales of fate. The beautiful and heroic woman shouted. The golden statue then stretched out the hand holding the scales. At the same time, a stack of chips condensed from golden light appeared in Isha's hand. Shia Luote, watch carefully. This is the true way to use our bloodline. We are not the ones who obey fate, but the ones who change it. These are the chips condensed from the fate of our lives. Family, friends, subordinates of the kingdom, all glory and shame, glory and destruction, all are in these 10 chips. With these chips as the wager, we will pry fate. Isha looked down at the two from above. At this time, stars were circling above the cabin. The statue of the goddess of fate stretched out her arms, and images appeared on both sides of the scales. One was a boy with black hair and golden eyes. The other was an embryonic ice monster. Between the two sides, the balance went up and down and finally stopped at the position of the ice monster. Isabella saw this and smiled slightly. If it's only this small difference, then one will be enough. Fate chips, place your bets. Roger that. Isha flicked her finger, and a golden chip jumped and smashed into Luoya's side. The next moment, the golden statue's mechanical voice sounded, and the scales suddenly tilted. The statue of the goddess of fate released a golden light. The ice monster seemed to be cursed by this light, and its strength was greatly reduced. In just a few seconds, there were only a few white streams of air surrounding it. Luoya felt a strange power descending on him, as if fate was on his side. The boy finally understood why the system had such a high success rate. 10, 9, 8, under the protection of this bloodline skill and his fiancée's gemstone behind him, Luoya finally finished absorbing the cold air around him. The moment the white streams of air were completely pulled over, the system prompt sounded. Ding, partial absorption successful, acquired skill, touch of frozen earth, I finally succeeded. Under the double attack of capitalism and feudal superstition, the ancient monster finally lowered its head. Luoya saw this and breathed a sigh of relief. 300,000 yuan, not a waste. The boy smiled stiffly. The next moment, his vision turned black and he fainted. At midnight, under the pale moonlight, a fleet was anchored in the sea where the Golden Fleet once fought. Small boats circled the sea area mixed with the golden liquid to collect samples. On the bow of the ship, a group of believers in white robes was praying to the moonlight under the leadership of an old man. The whole fleet was silent and strange. Across the entire fleet, such a scene was happening at every bow. Chapter 164. In the dark valley, Luoya stared blankly at the distant mountains that seemed like an iron curtain. In front of him, the blonde woman on the throne appeared from the darkness. Her exquisite figure was covered in an ancient robe, and her blonde hair emitted a faint golden light in the darkness. We meet again. It seems that you have successfully survived the crisis, but I didn't expect that you didn't use my blessing. Should I praise you for this? Or did you do it on purpose? On purpose? What do you mean? Fear, worry. These are the emotions that humans naturally have towards us. To a certain extent, powerful beings are connected with fear. Being afraid of being interfered with and controlled is an instinct of living beings. Under the dark mountain range, the sunlight was dim. Luoya looked back at the blonde woman's eyes that were emitting light. He remained silent for a long time about her speculation and observation. I'm not on guard against you. In the end, rather than saying that I don't want to use your skill, it's better to say that I don't want to use it. Don't want to use it? The black-haired boy lowered his head slightly, as if thinking about something. Under Pei Taylor's gaze, he said faintly, I have a premonition that danger is approaching. It's just that the previous small skirmishes are far from the time to reveal my trump card. The strongest power is used in the most dangerous moment. This has always been my principle. Oh, I didn't expect that you would cherish my blessing so much. To be honest, hearing you say that makes me feel good. Indeed, cherishing my blessing is respect for me. It's good to know how to respect. Pay Taylor raised the corner of her mouth, and a smile appeared on her beautiful face. However, she also had some doubts. But to be honest, the difference between your true self and your age is quite big. True self? That's right. This space is my world. Even if you can come in, you can't deceive me here. The you here is the real you without any disguise. So it's like that. No wonder I keep having a strange feeling. Luo nodded. He finally understood why he felt unnatural after coming here. The blonde woman leaned on the throne and looked at the boy. The light in her eyes intensified. No matter what, since you've fulfilled the first promise and met me again, I should show you some sincerity. Pay Taylor's vertical pupils shone brightly. She stared at the black-haired youth and locked eyes with him. At this moment, Luo felt his eyes burning and couldn't help but narrow them. What did you do? Hehe, it's just a small gift. You'll notice it when the skill is activated. Pay Taylor smiled as she looked at Luo. She seemed to be staring at something far away. After a long while, she opened her red lips as if she had thought of something. By the way, I heard that guy say that he wants to ask questions, right? That guy. It's that noisy giant outside. What a troublesome fellow. Hey, Gulandea? The black-haired boy's eyes widened. Pay Taylor nodded her head. She rested her chin on her hand and looked at Luo with a smile. She was obviously very interested in him. That's him. He was very angry because he couldn't enter this place. He even threatened me not to have any ideas. Hey, there's actually such a thing. You guys can contact each other, of course, but you're still the bridge of communication. But I'm really surprised. You can actually make that kind of existence care about you. How did you do it? Pay Taylor curiously looked down at the boy who was happily thinking about his companions. Luo was stunned. He thought for a while and smiled. Because we're friends. Friends? The blonde woman widened her eyes at Luo's words. After blinking her beautiful eyes, Pay Taylor suddenly laughed. You can actually become friends with that kind of guy. Ha ha ha, little guy, you're really interesting. Chapter 165. In the cabin, when Isha Bela's words reached Shia Luote's ears, the reddish-brown-haired girl's body stiffened. Aye, Sister Isha Bela? What did you say? You didn't hear me clearly? Seriously, we don't have much time to waste now. The brown-haired woman frowned when she saw Luo's condition. She pushed Shia Luote to the bed despite the cold air. Her Majesty Queen tried her best to maintain her composure. She pointed at the black-haired boy's lips and said, "Kiss him. Now." Hey. No, why do you have to do this? Shia Luote's body flashed with light as she maintained Luo's state. However, her face instantly flushed red. Her mind was filled with question marks as she looked at her sister behind her. Isha Bela was helpless when she saw her sister's innocent look. Her Majesty Queen looked at her younger sister and couldn't help but worry. Shia Luote was perfect in her eyes. She was beautiful, kind-hearted, and a good child. She was also extremely talented. Even Isha Bela didn't dare to say that she was better than her. However, there was one thing that made Her Majesty Queen speechless. She was too pure in her feelings and was too shy. The heroine Isha Bela recalled her love experience. She remembered that when she first met Vincent during her travels, she was beaten up by him in the ruins. At that time, Isha Bela was young and hot-blooded. She was proficient in gemstone spells. She didn't hold back and beat Vincent until his face was swollen. In the end, she accidentally triggered a trap and the two of them were trapped underground. What happened next could be said to be a reversal. Although Isha Bela was powerful, she only wanted to obtain the treasures in the ruins. She had no interest in archaeology. On the contrary, Vincent, who was beaten down, relied on his knowledge to find a way out. The two of them turned from enemies to friends along the way and worked closely together. Finally, they managed to escape with their lives. To be honest, Isha Bela had always felt that this episode was quite strange. She even suspected that Vincent had some strange XP. However, Vincent had been quite normal all these years, so she didn't think too much about it. After that, Vincent traveled with Isha Bela's team to many places. His strength grew stronger as time passed. However, as the heir to the kingdom of Sophia, Isha Bela did not reveal her identity. A year later, the journey ended. Isha Bela, who knew what her little brother was thinking, could only leave with a kiss and a sigh before leaving without saying goodbye. It wasn't until 5 years later that the two of them met again at the evening Sage Club. Although Vincent couldn't see her face and her voice had been altered, he still vaguely recognized Isha Bela. The two of them, who met again, felt guided by fate. Their old feelings for each other were rekindled, and they finally got together. There was no doubt that Isha Bela and Vincent's relationship was a result of many twists and turns. Although they were engaged, it was actually a free-spirited relationship. It was a relationship that was deep and could withstand many twists and turns. However, in Isha Bela's eyes, her little sister's relationship with Shia Luote was not. An engagement that required benefits was a taboo for the Sophia family. In fact, because of the loyalty source substance, the Sophia royal family's females had the right to refuse an engagement. Situations like Shia Luote's situation were very rare. It could only be said that the Sophia family had lost this fine tradition after hundreds of years of independent development. When they first met and discovered that Shia Luote was a super genius, Isha Bela should have cancelled her engagement and given her freedom. However, the identity of Luo Ye's little brother made her feel helpless. More importantly, although it wasn't obvious, Shia Luote seemed to be really moved. Shia Luote, he's your future husband. What are you afraid of? No, actually, our engagement can be annulled, it's not about the engagement. Don't you like him? Isabella's straightforward shot was as if she had ripped off Charlotte's concealment. The girl's eyes widened and her face turned as red as blood. I didn't, her. You didn't. The Queen snorted at the brown-haired girl's feeble explanation. At the same time, she was angered by her hurried denial. She thought for a moment and stared into Shia Luote's eyes. Well, since you said so, I'll give you 2 choices. If you like him, you can save him personally. This is a great opportunity. Originally, there was only an engagement, but you can rely on saving his life to truly connect with him and gain a deeper bond. If you don't like him, then leave. I'll use conventional methods to maintain his condition. No matter what, his life won't be in danger. Isha Bela's words stunned Shia Luote. Her gaze became conflicted and her body began to tremble. The Queen sighed when she saw this. Suddenly, her heart softened. She looked at her younger sister and said earnestly, Charlotte, our origin substances pretty much guarantee that we will be faithful to one person until the end of our lives. There are countless women in our clan who are too ashamed to pursue a relationship and end up in a tragic state. Do you want to follow in their footsteps? Think about your opponents. It's almost inevitable that other girls will appear around a boy like Luo Ya. If you don't have enough bonds with him before they take action, how do you plan to protect your family? Isha Bela's last sentence was like a violent blow to the brown-haired girl's body. Shia Luote's eyes flashed with the shadows of 2 girls, one with blonde hair and the other with silver hair. In the end, her attention returned to the word family. Her confused gaze gradually became firm and her body gradually stopped trembling. Fine, it's about time. Isha Bela secretly clenched her fists. Shia Luote also felt that she had made up her mind. I understand, Sister Isha Bela. Chapter 166. A day later, in the dim cabin, the girl's voice trembled. Her words were full of embarrassment and helplessness. Hey, don't move so much. I'm sorry, I can't help it. So, Mr. Luo Ya, can you explain why you used that spell? The ship was almost frozen by you. The girl's stern voice sounded. The black-haired boy who was shivering from the cold couldn't help but feel depressed. After holding it in for a long time, Luo Ya could only helplessly explain. I just wanted to try it. I really didn't want to make it so big. Well, I'm wrong. Forget it, I'm too lazy to blame you. Seeing Luo Ya's good attitude and shivering body, the red-haired girl's eyes flashed with sympathy. She stretched out her hand and snapped her fingers. The gemstones inlaid on the wall in the room immediately bloomed with brilliance. The light of the ruby shone on Luo Ye's body and accelerated his blood flow. Originally, this gemstone was used in the medical room to stop bleeding. Now, on Luo Ye's body, it was used in reverse to increase the heat. Next, the gemstones with several spells such as temperature increase, ice absorption, and so on lit up. In the dazzling light, Luo Ye's situation improved a lot. Under the illumination of so many operating lights, the chief surgeon finally came to the stage. Xia Luote stretched out her hand and put it on Luo Ye's shoulder. After the boy's trembling knees stabilized, she sat sideways. Her body gently leaned on the boy's chest, and her body began to emit a faint light. Golden Soul, this was the core item of the Sophia family, or the Highland Elf bloodline, to exert the power. Its essence was actually not gold, but a mixture of curses with gold components. In general, it could be hard or soft. The reason why the golden warship was called the golden warship was because there were these things flowing in the hull. They could strengthen the curse of the Highland Elf bloodline by several times or even dozens of times. The keel of the golden warship was made up of solidified golden souls, which could ensure that the ship would not fall apart no matter what happened. The rest of the acceleration, weight reduction, and cannons were handed over to the liquid circulation golden souls. The system formed by this could be said to be quite advanced. With this technology, the Sophia dynasty could even suppress the seafolk and become the overlord of the sea. Of course, there were pros and cons. The golden warship's weakness was that it had to be controlled by a bloodline holder of the family Sophia. Once the person was gone, the ship was basically useless. Just like the previous St. Paul, once the vice captain died, the warship was paralyzed. Returning to being an ordinary ship was like a piece of meat in the eyes of the seafolk. However, these were only the functions of the golden warship. Usually, the golden soul was considered the Sophia family's protective curse vessel. The liquid metal-like material could block most attacks and was the best shield. Pure golden curses could also be separated from the golden soul, which had more uses. For example, the current contact enhancement. Luo Ye named it Omnipotent Muscle and Bone Pads. How do you feel? Are you feeling better? Yeah, it's not that cold anymore. Speaking of which, I feel like your skills are even better than yesterday. I'm also improving. Besides, if I don't learn well, Xia Luote recalled what happened yesterday and blushed. Luo Ye coughed awkwardly. His gaze wandered around and finally stopped at the young lady's red lips. Recalling the moment when he woke up from his deep sleep and their eyes met, Luo Ye felt a little dizzy. Supporting Xia Luote's slim waist, the black-haired young man couldn't help but feel a little restless. She was indescribably beautiful, pure, and adorable. She was kind-hearted and willing to sacrifice herself to save him. If they didn't meet so late, Luo Ye really suspected that he would marry Xia Luote for the rest of his life. Sighing at the young lady's charm, Luo Ye shook his head and looked at the system to see the reason for his current behavior. Touch of Frozen Earth, a skill transformed from part of the ancient, terrifying disaster ability. When the frozen earth descends, everything will return to calm. Release a directional freezing air to the surroundings. It can be attached to any form of attack or defense. The range and strength are determined by the user's curse power. Side effect, intermittent cold. Looking at the side effects, Roher sighed. He didn't think that one day he would become a boxer, and what he learned was the 7 damages fist. If you want to freeze someone, freeze yourself first. Master Yi, I've learned a lot. Shi Ye's world was realistic. Great power often came with a heavy price. In the past, Luo Ye could be said to have never touched this area until Touch of Frozen Earth taught him a lesson. This morning, the golden ship was caught by the seafolk. A huge sea monster with a group of scaly people stretched out its tentacles covered in mucus and wanted to wrap around the St. Mary. Luo Ye, who faced the threat of tentacles for the first time, didn't dare to hold back. He decisively used Touch of Frozen Earth. It was a freezing airflow wrapped in ice. When the ice mist swept across the sea like a dragon, not to mention the scaly people, sea monsters, and even the morning fog froze at that moment. This short encounter was quickly won by the humans, but for Luo Ya, it was a failure because he froze the sea monster's claws on the deck and couldn't remove them. This giant tentacle extended more than 20 meters out of the ship, and the other end was directly dragged in the sea like a tail. Chapter 167. For the next day, Luo Ya had a pretty good time. With Xia Luote as his milk bottle, Luo Ya became arrogant. Freezing air. Use. 7 injuring fists. Hit. Since his moves were powerful, he had to find a strong opponent to hit. It didn't matter if he was injured. He could just find Xia Luote and let her train her control of the Golden Soul. It had to be said that hugging Xia Luote was very comfortable. The feeling of holding the girl's exquisite and luxurious body in his hands fully satisfied Luo Ya's possessiveness. Moreover, the big miss was very cute when she was shy. Luo Ya couldn't get enough of it every time. Of course, as a vigilant and responsible person, Luo Ya didn't do anything to Xia Luote. The reason why he repeatedly tormented Xia Luote was to familiarize himself with the skill. Frozen Earth Touch was a rare skill that came from Luo Ya's origin substance, crown. According to the system, Frozen Earthmaker was a mutated version of the crown stone. Although Luo Ya didn't understand the details, he was sure that this was a unique skill. Unlike the Gulan Deus, Strength, Origin Substance and Undying Transformation, Frozen Earth Touch was a skill that belonged to Luo Ya. It could be practiced and grew. The more he used it, the more he could understand it and become more powerful. That's right, Luo Ya was leveling up because he was very uneasy. Originally, Luo Ya thought that with his interference, Egg's strength was damaged, and the Golden Fleet's flagship, the Saint Mary, had greatly increased its speed. The fleet should be able to shake off the enemy and hold out for 2.5 days for him and Xia Luote to return safely. However, Isha Bela's words at noon made him feel very uneasy. The Silver Eagles haven't found Gordon and the others for 2 days in a row. Something's wrong. The Silver Eagle was a wide-area search curse vessel used on the Golden Warship to investigate the enemy's situation. It was inlaid with silver and gems, and its flying speed was far faster than ordinary birds by relying on curse power. Before this, Isha Bela and Gordon's fleet were monitoring each other, but since the arrival of Luo Ya and others, Gordon's fleet had disappeared. Obviously, Luo Ya and the others had changed the original strategy of both sides, making the future even more confusing. After learning that there was no news of the rebel fleet led by Gordon, although Luo Ya didn't show any reaction on the surface, he was nervous and uneasy. He would feel uncomfortable if he didn't do anything. Increasing his strength, even if it was just a little, was Luo Ya's current idea, and he put it into practice. In Luo Ya's intensive familiarization and practice, the scaly people were turned into popsicles and sunk into the sea one by one. The instinct of the tentacle sea monsters made them start to stay away from Luo Ya, because they would lose if they fought with Luo Ya. The half-frozen octopus claw on the ship was a lesson learned. Obviously, the mollusks also had a desire to survive. After several rounds of confrontation, the enemies were scared away by the cold air. Luo Ya, who was bored, wanted to develop and expand his life function. He wanted to see if he could use it as a refrigerator, but he soon found out that it didn't work. The Frozen Earthmaker's cold air was different from the normal cold air. There was no way to adjust the power at all. With just a light sweep, it could freeze the squid claw into an open hammer. The frozen items were particularly difficult to melt, and they still couldn't be thawed after a day. After the 5th hug with Milady in the evening and his waist was pinched, the black-haired boy also knew that he had gone too far. He could only gnaw on the octopus on the deck. However, what he didn't expect was that a guest came while he was enjoying the scenery. "Take this, the best white fruit wine." The words carried a hint of a smile. Luo Ya reached out and took the bottle of wine. He looked at the woman walking over and smiled. "Sister Isha Bela, I'm still a child. This wine is a bit strong. Men's wine is always strong. Isn't it good to get used to it in advance?" "Men. But you drink it too. Rulers have no gender." Ishar Bela chuckled and took a sip from her bottle. She walked to Luo Ya's side and leaned against the railing to look at the night sea. At this time, dozens of ships were shining brightly on the surface of the sea. Vaguely, the singing of sailors could be heard. Luo Ya opened the bottle cap and took a sip of the wine. He couldn't help but grin at the spiciness. Ishar Bela saw this and laughed. She snatched the white fruit wine and gave Luo Ya another bottle of beer. "Forget it, drink this. Beer is more compatible with the boy." Her Majesty said so with a smile. Luo Ya couldn't help but smile. He looked at the beautiful and handsome woman and suddenly felt a little envious of Vincent. Presumably, only his ancestors' excellent appearance, strength, and wonderful fate could win the favor of such a woman. Ordinary men would feel ashamed standing in front of her, let alone trying to court her. "Sister Ishar Bela, why are you suddenly looking for me?" Luo Ya, who had become quite familiar with her over the past few days, asked softly as he tasted the new wine. The brown-haired woman smiled. After pondering for a while, she said, "Nothing. I just want to ask what you think of Xia Luote." "Xia Luote?" "Yes, I heard that although you two are engaged, you haven't known each other for long, so I want to hear your thoughts about her." Chapter 168. The next morning, Luo Ya was awakened by the sound of the alarm. When the black-haired teenager opened his eyes, the gemstones on the wall were glowing red under the effect of the curse. He was shocked and quickly got up. Although there were many gemstones on the golden warship, the ones that woke the crew up were not of this color. Red gemstones represented an alarm on the ship. When it lit up, it meant only one thing, and that was the appearance of the enemy. The sound of the crew's hurried footsteps and noises came from the corridor. Luo Ya got up, put on his coat and rushed out of the door. He saw Xia Luote, who also rushed out of the door. "Luo Ya, it's an enemy attack." The reddish-brown-haired girl frowned uneasily. Luo Ya's face did not change, but he could not help but sigh in his heart. After all the calculations, the danger could not be avoided. Witness countdown, 24 hours and 47 minutes, looking at the countdown in the system, Luo Ya knew that there was no way to avoid it. With more than a day left, they would either win or lose in the sea battle. There was no way to delay it on land. Thinking of this, the teenager grabbed the girl's hand and rushed to the upper deck. Along the way, the two of them saw a group of people looking to the east. Luo Ya turned his head and saw a fleet emerging from the sea under the light of the rising sun. Without a doubt, the 6 light spots were the 6 disasters that Gordon and the others worshipped as the gods. As for the reason why the fleet suddenly caught up with the golden warship, Luo Ya also found out. The sea folk. Under the light of the rising sun, the strange-looking tentacle monsters in the sea were gradually sinking into the deep sea. They hated the strong light and would only appear on cloudy days. However, they were not interested in the warships that were within reach. Obviously, the sea monsters and the rebels led by Gordon were in cahoots. In order to take back the egg, they had joined hands with the sea folk and became the traitors of the human army. Gordon should not have the ability to communicate with the sea folk. Why would those fishes help him? If it's Gordon, it's indeed impossible. However, our enemy is not only them. Ishar Bela looked at the enemy warships in the distance while surrounded by sailors. Her eyes were full of seriousness. "I'm afraid it's a trick of the Saint Heroes Guild," Her Majesty said as she gave the order loudly. Dozens of warships began to set off amidst the sound of the broadcast. They gathered in formation and took up advantageous positions. Hundreds of silver eagles on the warships soared in the sky to observe the situation of the enemy. The detection under the water was also activated. In the distance, Gordon's fleet was also making an emergency turn. The captains were personally steering the ship, trying their best to keep it parallel to the Golden Fleet's warships, so as to avoid being shot to the bottom of the sea by the bow cannons. More than an hour had passed in the midst of their respective preparations. The distance between the two sides was getting closer and closer. In a situation where both sides were clear about each other's tactics, no one would take the initiative to become the target of the main cannons. Close-range shooting and boarding battle would become the main theme. The sailors on the mast readied their arrows, and the soldiers on the side of the ship held their shields. While both sides were tense, a light flashed on St. Mary's. It was a communication request from St. Martin, the flagship of the rebels. Isha Bela looked into the distance. Her gaze passed through the vast sea and landed on the white-haired old man at the bow of the flagship opposite her. She thought for a moment and finally turned on the device gently. "It's been a long time, Isha Bela." An old voice rang out, greeting the brown-haired queen. It was also the first and last communication before the battle began. "Isha Bela, you should know that our race inherited the bloodline of the Highland Elves. Our bloodline gave us glory, and the source of our power, loyalty, was the source of our power. Mother Goddess was the great existence that our ancestors were loyal to in the past. It was the time when our race was at its most prosperous. Only by regaining the faith of the past can we regain the glory of the past." Gordon Sophia's old face flushed red. He looked forward and shouted under the gaze of tens of thousands of people on dozens of warships. "For thousands of years, the prosperous times have become a thing of the past. Destruction is unavoidable like fate. The power of Mother Goddess and the oracles is far from what we can contend against. Compared to them, humans are like eggs. Rely on the strong, obey fate, and regain loyalty. This is the way for us to survive," the old man said as he looked up at the sky. His eyes were filled with reverence. The sea was silent. The sailors looked at each other. The loyalty, source and the cruel reality made them cower. If it was justifiable, and if they were powerless to resist, then it seemed that it was only right to stand on the side of the strong. Gordon's words undoubtedly shook the will of the warriors. Amidst the clamor of the crowd, Isha Bela looked determined. She stepped forward and stood at the highest point of the warship, looking at the end of the waves. "Gordon, don't play such tricks anymore. Perhaps our ancestors were loyal to Mother Goddess, but don't forget that before that, all intelligent races were children of Shiya. If regaining the faith of the past can make us stronger, then it can only be the primordial goddess. As for the fate of destruction, don't make me laugh my head off. For thousands of years, the masters of the world have changed many times, but the civilization is still the same. Where is the invincible Mother Goddess that you speak of now? Who is controlling one of the 6 disasters? Humans may not be strong enough yet, but fate is far from over. What right do you have to talk about the future of humans when you've already prostrated yourself on the ground?" Isha Bela looked back and looked at her subordinates on the dozens of warships behind her. It was as if she could see the history of the birth of this huge fleet. "Do you think we don't know how strong the enemy is? No, we know. We also know that this mission is extremely dangerous. However, as the most powerful maritime group of the current human civilization and the army that has preserved the best technology, we represent the civilization itself. At this critical moment when the human world in the north is in danger, we are the last defenders of the entire civilization. When our descendants look back on history thousands of years later, they will be proud of our courage." Chapter 169. In the control room, Xia Luote looked at the vice-captain, who was nervously observing the situation nearby. She gently opened the door and walked into the ship. As she walked down the stairs, she looked at the colorful gem in her hand silently. The tremors of the ship made her feet slightly numb. The roars of the soldiers could be heard even in the cabin. However, these noises did not make Xia Luote excited. On the contrary, it made her feel very depressed. As the eldest daughter of Sorophia, although Xia Luote had not experienced much bloodshed since she was young, she was not a weak princess. Her powerful extraordinary strength and talent meant that her life would not be peaceful since she was born. However, even so, this battle was still unbearable for her. She was even secretly sad. Because this was a civil war. Unlike the terrifying scaly monsters that Luo Ya fought against before, both sides of this battle were humans. They were even Xia Luote's ancestors. Although the girl firmly supported Isha Bela, even if she won, Xia Luote would not be too happy. Because in the end, both sides would consume the strength of the humans. The Highland Elves would be greatly weakened in this civil war. Isha Bela was very clear about Shia Luote's thoughts. It was better to say that all the people of Sorophia hated this war from the bottom of their hearts. That was why the queen did not let Shia Luote, a girl with extraordinary talent who stayed away from the internal strife of Sorophia, fight on the battlefield. She did not want Shia Luote's hands to be stained with the blood of her own people. Putting the colorful gem that could form an absolute defense in a critical moment into her pocket, Shia Luote strolled towards the egg. The mission that Isha Bela gave her was to wait here. Although it was unlikely, if the Golden Fleet lost, then Shia Luote would activate the Eternal Seal plan and bury the Egg of Disaster in the depths of the sea forever. Stepping on the frozen ground, Shia Luote suddenly missed the days when she and Luo Ya were in the study of Akut Hill every day. Although those days were boring and there was no progress, now that she thought about it, she felt very fulfilled. Every morning, Shia Luote would start with a cup of scented tea personally brewed by the young man. She would read the information carefully, eat breakfast under his reminder, and argue noisily about salty and sweet. Although they would occasionally quarrel, Shia Luote was already somewhat used to it. Sometimes, she even found it quite interesting. After confiscating his potions, he would definitely feel sleepy in the afternoon. As expected, he should take an afternoon nap. No, he probably didn't need it anymore. At this thought, Shia Luote stopped in her tracks. She looked around and couldn't help but lower her eyes. Indeed, there was no need. Luo Ya and Shia Luote. Although the two of them were connected by marriage, in reality, the reason they were together was because of Shia Luote's employment. The clues of the Sophia dynasty and the lost technology were Shia Luote's original goals. But now, this goal had obviously been achieved, and even exceeded. At the same time, the relationship between Luo Ya and Shia Luote was also coming to an end. The goal of cooperation had been achieved, and the annulment of the marriage had been agreed upon. Next, it was time to end the song and disperse. From now on, their lives would return to their original paths. Luo Ya didn't need to brew tea anymore. He would once again become the young and promising feudal lord. Shia Luote wouldn't complain about the sweetness of the dishes because she didn't need to worry about the other person at the dining table. Their own brilliance and no longer interacted with each other. This was their ending. Shia Luote lowered her head and stared blankly at the ice and snow in front of her. Suddenly, she realized something strange. She didn't feel any joy. No matter if it was getting rid of the marriage or obtaining the lost technology and bloodline curse of the Sophia dynasty, she didn't feel anything in her heart. Instead, she felt miserable for some reason. He would probably return to the days when he was in love with those girls. The girl couldn't help but feel a lump in her throat. After thinking for a long time, she could only force a smile. There's nothing I can do. In his heart, I'm probably just an annoying employer, Shia Luote muttered to herself. She couldn't help but feel that her mood was very strange. However, the self-pitying girl didn't notice that while she was lost in her thoughts, a humanoid figure had silently stood up behind her. His body was made of liquid, and most of his facial features were missing. Only his terrifying mouth full of jagged teeth cracked open as if he was silently mocking her. If we can still be together, no, you can't go anywhere. Huh. A hoarse and ear-piercing reply came from beside her ear. Shia Luote's eyes widened and she suddenly turned around. Sharp claws made of liquid pierced towards the girl's neck. Shia Luote's protective pendant that sensed danger suddenly released a burst of light. But what the girl didn't expect was that the barrier that could stop a high-level extraordinaire was actually shattered by the sharp claws. At this critical moment, Shia Luote held the rainbow gem and wanted to build another defense, but it was all too late. Under the girl's desperate gaze, the sharp claws made of liquid came head-on. With the sound of a blade piercing into flesh, blood and flesh splattered. Crimson blood flowed down Shia Luote's cheeks. The warm feeling brought with it the warmth of its owner. The girl widened her eyes and stared at the boy who suddenly descended from the sky and protected her in his arms. Her brain was numb and couldn't function. "Hey, are you okay?" "I'm fine," a low voice sounded beside her ear. Shia Luote responded blankly. She looked at the familiar boy. Her body trembled as she lowered her head to look at the wound on his chest. At the same time, a hoarse and ear-piercing voice sounded. Chapter 170. In the cabin, the man and woman who had just escaped from danger hugged each other. Facing Luo Ya's decision to kill them, Xia Luote, who had experienced the terror of the enemy, felt uneasy. It's the sea outside, it's the liquid monster's home ground. I'm not going, it's his home ground. If I go, it won't be. But, he can hide in the Golden Soul, it's obvious that he's here to kill you and Isha Bela. He must die, the only one who can kill him is me. Luo Ya held the girl's face with both hands, looking straight at Xia Luote's trembling pupils. His emotions were affected by his ability, as cold as ice, but his words were full of gentleness. Wait for me here, be good. Okay. The girl blushed and nodded under Luo Ya's gaze. She activated the gem in her hand to open the barrier, and at the same time, Luo Ya's figure disappeared in the dancing snowflakes. Under the deliberate actions of both sides, the battle between the Golden Fleet and the Rebel Fleet had entered a white-hot state. The sound of the dead and injured sailors falling into the sea continued, and the bodies of the soldiers fighting fiercely in the water floated on the surface of the sea with puffs of blood. The chaotic battlefield and the sea environment should have allowed the liquid monster to be like a fish in water, but at this time, it had completely lost its usual confidence and leisure. Because it was facing a pursuit. Frost and cold, those were the most difficult things for the liquid monster to fight against, but now, it was being targeted by an opponent who completely restrained it. It didn't know what mistake it made, but there was no doubt that even in the sea, Luo Ya could accurately capture its location. The black-haired boy was like a soul chaser in the story in the eyes of the liquid monster. Everything about him was so strange, whether it was the sudden increase in strength, the fact that it didn't know why it could see its eyes, or the terrifying frost, all made it uneasy. But it probably didn't expect that in Luo Ya's eyes, these were actually very simple and clear. Liquid life puppet, Deoj Lacey Roderick. This was the liquid monster in Luo Ya's eyes. When Deoj Lacey drove the liquid puppet to board the ship under the disguise of the waves, the bloody disaster skill was activated. Luo Ya saw the monster enter the cabin through the deck. Knowing that Xia Luote might be the target, the boy made a prompt decision and killed his way in. Facts proved that Luo Ya was too impulsive, even with the giant skeleton blocking him. The huge difference in strength still made Luo Ya had a trip to the gates of hell, but that was all in the past. Pei Taylor's blessing, this skill that could only be used once, was far more powerful than Luo Ya imagined. Although the time was limited, it was able to raise Luo Ya's source rank to source rank 3. And with a high extraordinary rank as the foundation, Luo Ya's ability really blossomed, showing off its extraordinary power. The boy's body flashed in the air like a cannonball, and in a few seconds, he had already caught up with the assassin in the sea. His body smashed into the sea, and before his toes touched the sea, the cold air had already created a pure white foothold for him to land on. But this wasn't enough. Frozen earth. In an indifferent and cold whisper, the source substance of the crown bloomed with a disaster of ice and snow. In the middle of the sea surrounded by the ship, a white area suddenly began to corrode. That was the blessing of eternal frost, the death god's lament. Touch of frozen earth, under the support of Luo Ya's source rank, was no longer the same as before. Waves of frost gushed out like a volcano, spreading out like a huge wave, majestically spreading out in all directions. As a result, the waves became fixed, the waves became still, the seabirds in the sky silently fell, and everything returned to silence. Freezing the sea, this was a miraculous act that shocked everyone on the battlefield. The sound of cannons on the warships became clear at this moment, and the archers who had a good view shouted in disbelief. The soldiers on the deck also lost their heads out of fear, and the divers in the sea stopped fighting and scattered in all directions, beginning to flee for their lives. Realizing that something was wrong, the captains shouted loudly to change the rudder, but the enemy ships that were close to them were already frozen in the sea. Frost climbed up the hull of the ship, and the sailors who jumped off the ship had already turned into ice sculptures in midair. When they fell to the ground, they shattered into blood-red ice cubes. This terrifying scene caused the people on the warships to shrink into a ball. Deoj Lacey, I know you are here. Above the frozen sea, the black-haired young man looked at his feet with an indifferent expression. He opened his mouth and calmly spoke the details of the enemy. Puppeteer, or puppet school, is that how you are called? Luoya recalled the many schools in Bulonia, the country of scholars, in his mind, and filtered out the most likely name. Puppet school was a school that did not aim at one's own combat power, but to control all kinds of puppets to fight on behalf of the user. It advocated that the human body had limits, but the puppets controlled could be ever-changing. The appearance, shape, attribute, and nature could be changed according to the enemy. Even after costly rituals, the puppets could have special functions, such as the first attack that launched the attack had a special attack on the protective cursed item. However, as the saying went, there were pros and cons. Although the puppet school's puppets were extremely flexible, the puppeteer himself had no combat power. He could hardly move effectively in the process of controlling the puppets, and the source rank of the puppets could not be higher than the puppeteer himself. Chapter 171. Countdown, 40, 39, 38. In the cabin that was gradually turning cold, the black-haired youth calmly looked at the white-robed youth whose arm had been petrified. Lace's body was trembling at this time. He stared at Luoya, unable to figure out why he would appear here. No, impossible. How did you find me? You and I looked at each other, right? How does your arm feel? Luoya answered the last question of the dying man in front of him indifferently. Lace's face turned pale when he heard this. He glanced at his petrified arm. He did not expect that this small remnant of the curse power could make Luoya follow him all the way here. Wait, I'm a director of the Saint Heroes Society, and I have a very high position in the sect. You are Luoya, right? Tell me what you want, and I can satisfy you. Lace's white eyes gradually regained their color. He squeezed out an ugly smile on his face and quickly explained his position. However, the black-haired youth's face did not change at all. Don't waste your energy. What you said is not important to me. Then what's important? You can tell me. Not you, it's very important to me. Luoya glared at the enemy who had come to kill Xia Luote, and the cold air on his body surged like a dragon. Lace's face changed dramatically when he heard this. In the next moment, the puppet master's body suddenly burst into a bloody mist as he made his final struggle. Flesh decomposition. This was Lace's last life-saving move. His body would become a bomb of curse power and explode violently. His body could be decomposed into thousands of pieces under the control of his mind. As long as one piece could escape, Lace would have a chance to survive. Of course, the price of this was the loss of vital organs and functions for the rest of his life. He would live like a ghost, but this was nothing compared to death. After all, as long as he was alive, many things could be recovered little by little in this world where extraordinary power existed. After knowing that Luoya would not let him go, the puppet master's curse power was very decisive. In an instant, a violent explosion occurred in the narrow space of the spaceship, and a huge wave of curse power lifted everything into the sky. It was a bomb made by a Source Level 2 extraordinary with all his remaining curse power. When the bomb exploded, the violent fluctuation of curse power could be felt clearly even thousands of miles away. The spaceship Lace was on was blown into two by the terrifying explosion. The bloody sailors and the broken deck rolled into the sea together, and the billowing smoke blocked the view. The puppet master's remaining consciousness could not help but feel a little relieved after the explosion. With such a powerful attack in such a small area, even if Luoya did not die, he should not be able to chase after him. The ability to freeze the sea looked terrible, but Lace did not pay much attention to it. High-level extraordinary had many similar bloodline abilities that could do this, but even a Source Level 2 Frost bloodline could not stop Lace in his current state. After flesh decomposition, his curse power resistance would be ridiculously strong, which was why this skill could be used as a life-saving skill. Whether it was the great scholar of Bologna or the angel king of Saint Mestre, no one could stop Lace in this state. As long as he survived, he would have a chance to return to his peak at such a young age. When the time came, He must kill this damn little bastard's whole family. The puppet master smashed into the sea with a firm belief. At the same time, the frozen energy on Luo Ye's body exploded again. Deoj Lacey laughed in his heart when he saw this. It was just a Source Level 3 frost skill. How could it trap him? The confident puppet master's decomposed body swooped into the sea from the air and rushed into the fog like rain. However, what happened next was the opposite of what he thought, and he could not even understand it. He was still frozen. Why? At this moment, countless questions floated in the young man's heart, but soon, he found the reason. Wait, the source of this freezing energy is... How could it be? Deoj Lacey fled in horror, but it was too late. In just a few seconds, whether it was his body or his mind, the existence named Deoj Lacey had stopped functioning. You've become such a trash. You really saved me a lot of time. The black-haired young man stood on the sea and looked indifferently at the thousands of pieces of flesh falling and shattering. He shook his head in puzzlement in the rain of frozen flesh. Speaking of which, why does it feel like this escape skill is completely useless? Puzzled questions arose in the young man's heart, but he quickly threw them to the back of his mind. He could feel that Deoj Lacey's soul had completely returned to the underworld. Farewell, Mr. Deoj Lacey. The familiar ship, the familiar deck. When these were reflected in Luo Ye's eyes, the young man knew that he had arrived at his destination. On the deck of the St. Mary's, Luo Ye, who had returned from afar, stood quietly, panting. The surroundings were already covered in frost. In the last half a minute of the Pay Taylor's Blessing skill, Luo Ye made full use of his remaining energy. He did not return from the enemy's camp calmly, but instead, he greeted the enemy warmly. Chapter 172. Something's coming. This thought suddenly appeared in Luo Ye's mind, but he was able to confirm it almost immediately. It was a vague feeling, but it was also a pressure that couldn't be ignored. It trembled like a piece of ice suddenly pressed against the back of one's neck in the middle of a hot summer day. The pressure was also like the gloomy wind howling under the rolling dark clouds in the sky. Luo Ye's blurred consciousness quickly sobered up under this mysterious feeling. His golden pupils shrank, and the arm that was hugging Xia Luote tightened, startling the girl. Luo Ye? What's wrong? Are you in pain anywhere? The reddish-brown-haired girl wiped away her tears and asked anxiously. However, Luo Ye didn't know how to answer. He leaned on the girl's body in confusion and looked towards the horizon. Suddenly, he realized that the golden sun had disappeared at the limit of his vision. In the direction where the rising sun should have been, a black spot was expanding in the golden sunlight. It was like smoke, but also like a creeping darkness. Under Luo Ye's shocked gaze, the strange black thing swallowed everything. The light of the sun was covered, and everyone on the enemy's warship realized that something was wrong. Hey, what's that in the east? It's black. What's that? The sailors on the tall poles shouted to report the abnormality. The soldiers around Luo Ye frowned. Their long years of combat intuition told them that something was wrong. Xia Luote stopped wiping Luo Ye's sweat and followed Luo Ye's gaze to the east. The actions of the crowd caused a chain reaction. More and more people stopped what they were doing and looked towards the east. The gradually darkening sky caused the warships in the battle to automatically turn on their lights. The sound of cannon fire gradually stopped, and the people in the boarding battle began to split into two sides and look around vigilantly. What's that? Speak. Above the sea, Isha Bela roared angrily as she pressed the gem trigger against Gordon's head. However, the old man's consciousness was already hazy. His blurred eyes looked towards the dark sky, and his face was filled with fear and worship for the gods. That's why I said before, Isha Bela, don't try to resist. That will only lead to death. He has always been following behind us and obeying the Mother Goddess. That is our destiny. God's punishment will cleanse all traitors. Bang! In the midst of the sound of the trigger being pulled, the head of the fanatical believer shattered into pieces. Isabella looked indifferently at the dismembered corpse in front of her that sank into the sea, her tone cold. Even if you're the leader of the rebels, you're still a king. You can bow to your so-called god as a believer, but before that, every king has to consider their people first. The brown-haired queen looked up ahead. The darkness that covered the sky was rushing over from the distant horizon. The sky was blurry and the sea was no longer clear. Ishar Bela vaguely understood what it was. It was the destroyer of civilization, the calamity of all living beings, the lord of terror that was once classified as a calamity by the ancient civilization. Its name was Mr. Darkness. That was the name given to it by the ancient Ents that it destroyed. It was one of the 6 calamities, of the same standard as the object that this huge fleet was escorting. However, unlike the frozen earth creator that was still an egg, Mr. Darkness was a truly matured and terrifying calamity. It was a mythical monster that was born from the combination of fire and earth. The darkness that drowned everything was not some kind of curse power, but it was far more terrifying than that. It was dust, sand, and dust. It was the fog of death that would only be born from volcanic activity that shook the earth. The moving earth and the breathing of volcanoes were the true form of Mr. Darkness. It was also the reason why it was almost impossible to resist. It did not need to attack. It only needed to pass by, and what was left behind was death and silence. It was obvious that no one in the area could survive the attack of such a monster. Gordon's subservience and loyalty were of no use. His subordinates could only die. How foolish. Since ancient times, so many civilizations have been destroyed by them. How could there not be people who compromised? The people who resisted might not be around anymore, but how many of the people who obeyed them are still alive? The reason why the Highland Elves were able to continue their bloodline is not because of the Mother Goddess or these detestable monsters. It is because of the bloodline of the humans that you belittled. Ishar Bela muttered to herself as she gazed at the approaching enemies in the distance. Since ancient times, most of the traitors who betrayed their own race did not have a good ending, let alone betraying their entire race. Under the oppressive sky, the queen gazed at the approaching calamity. She recalled the guesses of the Sage Guild. I didn't expect to be targeted by these fellows. It seems that the scholars' guesses were correct. These fellows really do possess intelligence. Ishar Bela chuckled helplessly before the waves of destruction. But after that, her face revealed a calm and resolute expression. Perhaps this is the so-called fate. But even if the scales of fate have been fixed, I, Ishar Bela, will never bow down. Golden curses surged into the sky around the rare heroine. The communication between the ships immediately echoed in the sky above the entire sea. Brave warriors. There is no need to panic now that things have come to this. Just as I said before, the calamity of chaos has caught up with us. The footsteps of destruction are approaching our civilization. Gordon's illusions have been shattered. The ancient monster's targets are all humans here, regardless of friend or foe. Chapter 173. In the dark canyon, Luo looked up into the distance. The Black Mountain range stretched as far as the eye could see. The towering mountains blocked the sun, and only a little bit of light could be seen from the gaps in the mountains. Petra's golden hair was shining in the dim environment, and her white robe had a unique enchanting charm. She closed her eyes and sat on the throne as if she was in a deep sleep. She didn't open her eyes until Roher came from afar. What a surprise, you don't seem to be in a hurry. The golden-haired woman stared at the young man walking over and blinked her eyes in confusion. You should like that girl, right? If this continues, she will definitely die. I know, but venting my anger is meaningless to the current situation. It's just self-satisfaction. Even if I vent my anger, Shia Luote will still die. I don't want her to die, I want her to live. I don't want to lose her, so I have to be calm. Under Pay Taylor's gaze, the black-haired young man's voice trembled as he spoke. The blonde woman was stunned. She stared at the young man who was clenching his teeth and realized that his tightly clenched fist was beginning to bleed. I see. I understand. Then answer my question, Luo Akut. What is the most beautiful thing in fate? The answer to the most beautiful thing is difficult. Everyone's sense of beauty is different. But if it's fate, then I think it's choice. Choice. Pei Taylor widened his eyes in surprise. Luo Ya nodded. Ishar Bela once said that fate is a game. It is fixed at the moment of its end, and before that, it is a variable. Therefore, in the face of the fate of the destruction of the past civilization, she used herself as a bargaining chip to suppress humanity. In the face of fate, she chose to resist. I once thought that the most beautiful thing of fate was resistance, but after thinking about it carefully, I realized that there was actually a loophole in this. The black-haired youth looked at the mountains that blocked the sun, and his gaze seemed to look into the distance. He recalled what the brown-haired woman had done, and his nose seemed to smell the intoxicating fragrance of the white fruit wine. If I had told her in advance that this escort journey would be her last journey, and if I had told her in advance about the final result of the scale, would Ishar Bela have bowed to those monsters like Gordon and worshipped them as God's messenger? No, she won't. Luo Ya shook his head and calmly denied it. He sighed with respect and admiration. That's because Ishar Bela is a ruler. She's not Sophia's ruler, but the ruler of all humans. Even if she knows that she's going to die, she'll definitely follow fate and set sail for the future of the entire human race. She'll sink the egg of disaster into the ocean forever. On the battlefield, there are heroes who face death unflinchingly in order to protect their comrades. Before the plague, there are doctors who know the danger but still treat the sick. They're all people who choose to follow their own fates. However, the light that they shine with their lives isn't any weaker than anyone else's. In fact, they're even more dazzling and worthy of respect. Choice, and the people who make these great choices, they're the most beautiful things of fate. No matter if they obey or resist, they're not the slaves of fate. Instead, they're the masters of fate. Luo Ya's explanation echoed throughout the canyon. His voice was firm and powerful. Pei Taylor stared blankly at the youth below her. She looked into his golden eyes and repeated his words to herself. Not obeying or resisting, but choosing to become the most beautiful thing of all. The golden-haired woman leaned back on her throne and looked at the sky above the canyon. Her thoughts seemed to have traveled back thousands of years and returned to the mythical era. After a long while, she smiled lightly. Little fellow, thank you. You've allowed me to find meaning in obeying fate. Seems like you're quite satisfied with my answer. You've really found an answer that I like. Now, no matter what, I can't stay out of this. Perhaps this is some kind of fate. Pei Taylor smiled bitterly. She raised her head and looked into the distance. Her gaze fell on the battle between gold and black on the surface of the sea. Her expression gradually became serious. Little fellow, I'm willing to help you. However, I have to tell you a fact. That monster's strength is far beyond your imagination. You have a powerful protection spell on you. It's easy to save you, but to defeat the enemy and save that girl is as difficult as ascending to the heavens. You don't have enough spell power. Pei Taylor's words made the black-haired youth fall into silence. His worries had finally become reality. Whether it was Gulan Dea or Pei Taylor, they were great existences that had already become legends in the ancient times when the gods and demons were still around. However, no matter how powerful they were, they had already passed away. The only connection they had with the present world was Luo Ya. The last time he fought with Vader in the historical fragment was Luo Ya's limit. However, Vader was only at Source Rank 2 at that time. He had just broken through and was seriously injured. However, what about the 6 disasters, now? Chapter 174. In the dark depths of the sea, Luo Ya's body was wrapped in a rainbow-colored light as she slowly awakened. On the surface of the sea, it was the final moment. At the forefront of the entire human army, at the head of dozens of warships, stood 2 figures under the golden torrent. One was a brown-haired woman, and the other was a girl with lighter hair. Ishar Bela looked at Xia Luote with a surprised expression. Although it was weak, she had indeed sensed the energy fluctuations of the rainbow-colored crystal. Her Majesty glanced behind the girl and widened her eyes when she didn't see Luo Ya. So that's how it is. What a silly child. But I don't have the right to criticize you. Ishar Bela smiled bitterly as she opened her palm. A shining ring appeared in her tightly clenched palm. It was her engagement ring. Protecting mankind and civilization was indeed a great goal and a noble ideal, but it was very difficult for human beings to persist in a predicament with only ideals and goals. When disasters came, it was often the smaller and more intense feelings that made human beings burst out with unimaginable strength. For example, family and love. Protecting one's family and one's lover. This was what Shia Luote thought. At the same time, it was also the source of Isha Bela's courage and the motivation to move forward. Amidst the furious roar of the dark monster, the two women who were in love looked at each other and smiled. They were no longer afraid. They reached out their hands together. In the golden waves, the Colossus trembled and began its final battle with Mr. Darkness. At the same time, Luo Yue had already disregarded life and death in the dark depths of the sea. The black-haired boy reached out to touch the rainbow-colored barrier that isolated the seawater, his mind recalling the beautiful brown-haired figure. From the first time they met at Kate's house, to the cooperation in the study, to Austin's butterfly shadow, to the smoke on the golden battleship, everything had turned into the sound of a trigger being pulled. The moment Luo Yue fell into the sea, the last thing he saw of the girl wasn't a forced smile. Instead, it was an expression of holding back her tears. Those tears were the pain of parting and the fear of death. Why did Shia Luote do this? Was it to repay him for saving her? Was it because of her responsibility for what had happened? Or was it those feelings that were buried in his chest, burning to the point of being painful? It was impossible for people to understand each other. Individual differences would always exist, so Luo Yue could not determine the components of this behavior. But was this important? No, none of that was important. The most important thing was for her to survive and tell him personally. However, as the person to listen to it, I'm afraid that I might not be able to be there. The feeling of the curse power being stripped from his body continued. Luo Yue could feel that a huge body was being built in the darkness behind him. But just as Pei Taylor said, his curse power was far from enough. He could only overdraw his life force to replace it. The red curse power once again engulfed Luo Yue as if it was burning. The Gulan Deus immortality began to do its best to buy time for Luo Yue, but even so, the young man's body still had many negative statuses. His body gradually lost strength and his mind became unclear. The black-haired young man looked at the dark seabed around him. He suddenly felt that he might have to stay here forever. He was not afraid of death, but an unbearable unwillingness came with it. He really wanted to see her, even if it was just to say goodbye. What should he do? A small wish appeared in his heart. The black-haired young man pondered. The cold seawater made the surrounding temperature even colder. In the haze, Luo Yue seemed to have returned to the high platform in Rumen Forest. Under the starry sky, the golden butterflies competed with the moon. That was a butterfly as beautiful and noble as a golden rose. It was also the first gift that the young man gave to the girl that night. It was the beginning of their relationship and the crystallization of their bond. Right, she likes butterflies. The young man muttered to himself. He raised his hand. The golden light from when the butterflies were hatched shone again. In his cold body, the blood that seemed to have solidified began to circulate. The crown, origin substance that contained the young man's will began to tremble violently. Yes, this is the feeling. Luo Yue recalled the time when the butterfly monarch broke out of the cocoon and circulated his blood. Simulating the birth of the luminous butterfly did not require much curse power. At this time, he also did not consume much. In the familiar darkness, golden butterflies spread their wings one after another. They gathered into a group of butterflies and circled around their master. There was light in the darkness again, but last time it was in the dark night. This time, it was in the deep sea. Unknowingly, not only the butterflies, but also Luo Yue was dyed with a layer of light. The golden curse power spread like a rendering, causing the huge figure in the seabed to suddenly open his eyes. This is. The ancient god raised his head and looked at the fragment of the crown in disbelief. On the other side, the black-haired young man's face also showed a satisfied smile. Go. Chapter 175. Amidst the huge waves, the Luo Ya brand speedboat with billowing black smoke drifted across the sea, braving the wind and waves as it sped towards the location of the golden butterfly. The black-haired teenager recalled Pei Taylor's imposing figure as he looked at the system's evaluation. He struggled to prop up his upper body and glanced at the center of the golden butterfly in pain. The moment he saw that Xia Luote was unharmed, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. Crack! A crisp sound came from his arm. He wasn't sure if it was because he was relieved, but after entering the undead state, Luo Ya's bones no longer felt the need to be stubborn. He propped his arm up and declared it useless. Caught off guard, the teenager plunged into the smoke and dust. After a while, he coughed twice and turned over. He stretched out his hand to straighten the bone, but after thinking about it, he put it back. Forget it. The result of straightening it might not necessarily be the right one. It might even be crooked. Luo Ya, who had a new understanding of reality, sighed. Now, there were still sporadic red curses on his body. He was in a state of deep undead state. It was normal for his arms and legs to be brittle, so breaking them was nothing. The black-haired teenager tried his best to deceive himself, forcing his thoughts to move in a positive direction. He lay on his back and looked at the blue sky after Pei Taylor left. After experiencing the depression and despair brought by Mr. Darkness, the world now looked so beautiful in his eyes. The sun had risen, and the huge waves were gradually subsiding. The world had returned to its original state. Luo Ya felt joy in his heart under the vast sky. Although the process was tortuous and difficult, in the end, he protected the people he wanted to protect. Although it was only a few days, he really missed home. If anyone tells me anything about ancient literature when I go back, I'll twist their brains out, except for Xia Luote. Secretly ruthless in his heart, Luo Ya observed his surroundings, waiting for the black fog to bring him to meet up with the golden butterflies. However, after a few glances, the teenager's expression changed. Why did it feel wrong? Luo Ya looked at the golden light that was getting farther and farther away. He blinked and couldn't help but shake his head. Ha ha ha, how is that possible? Pei Taylor is Mother Earth, how can she get lost? The black-haired youth chuckled. However, he soon discovered that he could no longer laugh. This was because the golden butterflies were getting further and further away. They were almost out of sight. The young man stared into the distance, dumbstruck. In the next moment, he started cursing loudly. Fuck. There's something wrong with this car. Pei Taylor. Are you kidding me? Pei Taylor. Damn it. Luo Ya cursed the ancient god in his heart. The black-haired youth looked around and urgently thought of countermeasures. After thinking for a while, Luo Ya realized that there was only one thing he could do. He jumped out of the car and sank to the bottom. Thinking of this, Luo Ya couldn't help but feel sorrowful. Looking at the sea, he doubted his life. This is different from what we agreed on, right? Wouldn't they be sent to their allies if they were wounded in battle? The black-haired youth gritted his teeth and tried his best to flip over and dive into the sea. However, what he didn't expect was that what greeted him was not the cold sea, but a warm embrace. What are you doing all of a sudden, idiot? A tearful reprimand sounded in his ears. A familiar fragrance lingered at the tip of his nose. Luo Ya couldn't help but look up and saw Xia Luote with red eyes. Just as Luo Ya was about to jump out of the car, the reddish-brown-haired girl successfully arrived with the help of the Golden Soul. She caught the youth in the nick of time. Following closely behind was Isha Bela, who was slightly injured but almost exhausted of her curse power. Xia Luote, the black-haired youth, looked at the girl who was close by. His lips moved, but he suddenly didn't know what to say. How did you find me? I thought you couldn't find me. It brought me here. The girl choked with sobs and pointed at the golden butterfly flapping its wings on her shoulder. Luo Ya was surprised when he saw this, but he immediately felt relieved. I see. Looks like the gift has arrived. The youth said with a chuckle. However, the girl hugging him couldn't laugh anymore. Xia Luote's eyes swept across Luo Ya's battered body. The tears that she tried to hold back finally flowed down her face. How could this be? You're injured so badly. If this continues, Xia Luote cried as she took out gems one by one. She pulled the trigger and the precious gems shattered and dissipated one by one. Healing and purification, stamina recovery, and mental stimulation. A series of buffs were cast on Luo Ye's body as if they were free. However, the effects were minimal. Chapter 176. You want to join the Society of Sages? That. Isha Bela, who was giving Xia Luote an emergency pre-marriage training, turned her head when she heard Luo Ye's question. Her expression was both gratified and a little troubled. Luo Ye, it's good that you have such an idea, but the Society of Sages has many requirements. Your strength may meet the requirements, but your source rank is still too far away. Isha Bela recalled the giant python that connected heaven and earth and swallowed one of the 6 disasters, Mr. Darkness. She couldn't help but have a completely different understanding of Luo Ye's strength. Although she didn't know how he formed a connection with that kind of god, there was no doubt that it was a huge power that the Society of Sages urgently needed. Sister Isha Bela, I understand the difficulties of the Society of Sages. Is there any other channel, no matter what? Can you give me some clues? The black-haired young man said anxiously. Of course, he didn't really want to join the Society of Sages. After all, hundreds of years after Luo Ye and Xia Luote existed, this mysterious society had long disappeared in history, leaving behind many mysteries. Isha Bela, this was the only member of the Society of Sages that Luo Ye had met so far, and she was obviously a core member. In a situation where there was no information at all, this was almost the only way he could get close to this mysterious organization. Looking at Luo Ye, who was asking for information, Xia Luote blinked as if she understood something. She held Isha Bela's hand and also asked for information. Sister Isha Bela, I also want to join the Twilight Society of Sages, but my strength is much weaker than Luo Ye's. Can you tell me who founded this organization? How can I join? This. The Twilight Society of Sages was founded at the end of the last era. I don't know who the founder is, only the president should know. The president? That's right, it's Sage. This title is exclusive to the president of the Sage Society, and according to what the Sage said in the past, there should be a succession of titles. Isha Bela crossed her arms and recalled the president's words. After a while, she repeated it for Luo Ye and Xia Luote. The sage once said that the wise one of the past would be in an even more difficult situation. The enemy isn't just the mother goddess. Based on past experience, even he might be sacrificed. Luo Ye's eyes widened as he listened to Isha Bela's words. Once, past experience, sacrifice. Putting these words together, it was obvious that the sage had changed, but he had no idea who it was. From the looks of it, he could only start by joining. Luo Ye, who had changed his direction, started asking about the way to join the society. Isha Bela thought for a while and pointed the way for the 2 children. Due to the nature of the Sage Society, there may be serious consequences if a traitor appears. Therefore, the examination to join the society is very strict. In the beginning, the Sage Society would take the initiative to look for you, but this method was too inefficient, so later on, there was a recommendation system. Recommendation? Sister Isha Bela, you can do that. I do have this authority, but to join the society, you need at least 2 recommendations. 2 referees. This. I thought you didn't know each other. Luo Ye was a little dumbfounded by Isha Bela's answer. According to the information he knew, the sages of the Sage Society basically didn't know each other, so how could he contact 2 members? Was it to discuss the recommendation together? That didn't seem very likely. After all, the recommendations were transparent. Wouldn't this be equivalent to exposing part of the recommendation's interpersonal relationships? What if the recommendation's true identity was found out? Luo Ye and Xia Luote frowned as they thought about these problems. Isha Bela smiled when she saw this. I know that you have questions, but you're mistaken about one thing. Actually, we don't know the recommendations. You don't know them? Then how do you know the quality and strength of these new members? It's very simple. Because we have enough time and environment to observe them. Isha looked at the two surprised children and hesitated for a moment. After thinking about it, she decided to reveal the answer. After all, both Luo and Xia Luote were highly talented. They would be more than qualified to join the Sage Society in the future, not to mention that they were her and Vincent's relatives. The Academy in Bologna, the country of scholars. The Sage Society selects its talents from there. Her Majesty the Queen looked at the boys and girls and decided to make things clear. Every year when they enter the Academy, the Sage Society will send different marks with blessings to the candidates. They will treat it as an ordinary protective curse vessel, but the members of the Sage Society will recognize it. They will observe everyone's performance and behavior, then make their own evaluations and choose their own recommendations. The members who have the right to recommend will change every year, and the recommended will not join the society immediately after being selected. Instead, someone will be sent to persuade them when they are most likely to join the society. Some people may join the society after leaving the academy for a year, and some may join decades later. This ensures that our respective identities will not be discovered to the greatest extent. I see. Luo and Xia Luote nodded after listening to Isha Beila's explanation. The Sage Society's system could be said to protect the members' respective interests to the greatest extent possible, but Luo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Chapter 177. They should arrive in a few days. On the official road leading to Akate City, a gorgeous carriage pulled by beautiful white horses was galloping on the road. Inside the carriage, a blonde girl looked at the snowy scenery outside the window and thought. She couldn't help but recall what happened 10 days ago. It was the 1007th year of the Third Era. This year's New Year was completely different for Nuo Aria. Originally, the princess would spend every New Year's in Saint Lorraine. Attending the prayer meeting of the Holy See was the task of Nuo Aria as the heir of the royal family. In some years, she even had to participate in a choir competition. But this year, the princess, who had attracted a lot of attention, did not appear in the Saint Lorraine. Whether it was the palace banquet or the prayer meeting, Nuo Aria did not attend either. It could be said that this was a huge blow to the princess's fanbase in the Saint Lorraine. The direct impact was that the local sales of the Holy See video this year had plummeted. So where did Nuo Aria spend this year's New Year? The answer was the Eastern Front Line. As the representative of the royal family and the future heir, the princess's personal visit to the front line during the New Year was undoubtedly a morale booster. It was also evidence that the royal family of Heidi Crete attached great importance to the situation at the front line. In fact, Nuo Aria's arrival did indeed have a good effect. As the national idol of the theocracy of Saint Maister, Nuo Aria was loved by almost all the frontline soldiers. This kind of love was not the love of a fan. Strictly speaking, it was more like love. They loved the princess, not because of her beauty, but because of her strength. As a leader, the public's evaluation of a leader may be affected by their appearance. But in the end, strength was the most important. Nuo Aria was a leader who was currently strong and had terrifying potential in the future. She was highly regarded by the military. With the support of the masses, the support of the seniors, the noble status, and the talent and looks, it was impossible for others to not be convinced by such a combination. Especially when Nuo Aria took the initiative to sing a requiem for the soldiers who had sacrificed themselves during the New Year's song, it won over the hearts of countless soldiers. These days, there were many generals who dared to lead their soldiers into battle. This was because the generals were usually powerful extraordinaries. Their role was to lead the charge and tear open the enemy's defenses. However, there were very few who could manage the situation until their deaths. In the theocracy, only the Akate family, who had a complete military system, and the royal family, Heidi Crete, were at the forefront. They were the only two families who received pensions. Therefore, there was a reason why there were strong and weak military forces. Just like the social animals in Luo Ya's previous life, the soldiers were not fools. They knew better than anyone else which side they should serve. The New Year's celebration went smoothly and successfully, and Princess Nuo Aria's reputation rose to its highest point yet. However, as the princess herself, Nuo Aria had another purpose for coming here. She was here to visit Ka. There were two reasons for this. On the one hand, since Luo Ya could not come to the eastern region, it was necessary for her to visit the elders of her beloved's family. On the other hand, Nuo Aria needed to find Ka to discuss the matter of cancelling Luo Ya's engagement. As the head of a family who pursued stability, Ka, who believed in free love, stood on the side of Nuo Aria and Ari Lisi. During the new year, news of Luo Ya's old father personally taking part in the battle spread like wildfire, and he almost succeeded in helping the two of them solve a big problem. However, as the saying goes, when Nuo Aria and Ari Lisi felt that everything was settled, and when Ka slapped his thigh and thought that he had succeeded, Luo Ya was already reading a book hand in hand with the capital dog. Then came the tragic news. The plan was exposed, and the native Ari Lisi was defeated by the powerful dragon. She could only escape to the holy capital and urgently contact Nuo Aria. To be honest, when she heard Ari Lisi say that she did not manage to hold on, Miss Angel's mood collapsed, and she cursed on the spot. "You came back just like that. Are you a waste? That's your home." Nuo Aria was very excited at that time, but Ari Lisi was even more excited in the Akut family's emergency communication system. "Isn't it because your plan was exposed? That Xia Luote discovered some clues and told Big Bro. Now Big Bro Luo Ya must hate me, hoo. The silver-haired girl began to wipe her tears as she spoke. Her aggrieved look made Nuo Aria's head hurt, but after hearing Ari Lisi's complaints, Miss Angel was speechless. As the saying goes, it's not that Ari Lisi didn't work hard, it's that Xia Luote was too cunning. She used fate divination 3 times to confirm her love. Nuo Aria was dumbfounded when he heard this. Moreover, in terms of identity, Xia Luote had a natural counter to Ari Lisi. In Luo Ya's previous life, Xia Luote was an outsider's daughter-in-law. As for Ari Lisi, she was the family's sister-in-law and adopted sister. Her identity was really difficult to deal with. If she made things difficult for Luo Ya, not only would it be rude, but it would also destroy Ari Lisi's image in Luo Ya's heart. It might even push Luo Ya to the side of an enemy. Xia Luote didn't have any restrictions. Every day, she would be by Luo Ya's side, hugging Ari Lisi. She would often make Ari Lisi bite her handkerchief with tears in her eyes. Although Big Bro Luo Ya said that he only had a deal with that woman, and that once it ended, the engagement would be cancelled, but, you believe that kind of nonsense? Nuo Aria scoffed at Luo Ya's words. Perhaps the youth wasn't lying, but she felt that Xia Luote was lying. "You've already used fate divination 3 times, and you're telling me that you're not moved and that you only had a deal with him? Do you think I'm an idiot?" Miss Angel thought angrily. She felt that her intelligence had been insulted. Even if Xia Luote wasn't moved now, it didn't mean that she wouldn't be moved in the future. A single man and woman hugging, no matter how she thought about it, it was too dangerous. Thinking back to the red-haired girl she saw in Rouse, Nuo Aria's heart sank like a weight. Xia Luote's noble Highland elf bloodline gave her an indescribable charm, and once the sorcerer clan's origin substance fell in love with someone, it would be very troublesome. Of course, Luo Ya's appearance wasn't bad either. They were of the same standard, but no matter how handsome the youth was, Nuo Aria didn't think that Luo Ya would be able to make Xia Luote fall in love in a short period of time. After all, Xia Luote was the actual princess of Rouse, and she had seen too many handsome youths. Moreover, the sorcerer clan's females were very cautious when it came to marriage, and they were even somewhat conservative. Would they be able to get together in 10 days? How was that possible? Chapter 178. Find them. Find them for me. No matter what, we must find Miss and young Master Luo Ya. In the jewel necklace convoy, G. Lacey looked at the empty room and loudly ordered. Sophia's elite guards immediately scattered in all directions. The black-haired maid recalled everything that had happened and felt her scalp go numb. As a full-time maid of the Sophia family, G. Lacey had always been loyal to her duties. She was confident that she would never betray her mistrust, especially in the area of safety. She had deep feelings for Xia Luote and could be said to be meticulous. She had to personally control every step of the way. Over the years, it wasn't that there weren't people who tried to cause trouble for the Sorofia family. There were indeed people who wanted to take risks, but as soon as they got close to Xia Luote, they would mysteriously disappear without exception. The strength of a level 3 source rank was no joke. As long as Ji Lacey was there, most of the assassins wouldn't live long enough to see Xia Luote. But today, Ji Lacey had miscalculated. The miss of the Sorofia family, her most beloved master, had actually disappeared right under her nose. And it wasn't just Xia Luote who had disappeared, even the young master of the Akut family had disappeared with her. In Ji Lacey's mind, there were only 4 words that could describe this situation. The sky fell and the earth cracked. No, don't panic. There's still hope. The door of the jewel necklace hasn't been opened and there's no sign of the curse nearby. They're definitely still in the carriage. The maid with wet eyes and trembling body pressed her temples and tried her best to think of the possible situation. Because in theory, the fluctuation of the curse and the effect of the curse happened at the same time. When the transfer curse was activated, the caster of the curse would leave, so the fluctuation of the curse couldn't be removed. There was only one possibility, and that was the curse released by the 2 people in the isolation room. Because Xia Luote and Luo Ya used the twin stone to go to the Austin Empire to participate in the luminous butterfly gathering in the Rumen Forest, the 2 of them were unconscious. In this situation, they naturally needed extra protection. This isolation room was built for this purpose. Its material was special and could isolate curse power. Outsiders could not use curse power to enter, but the people inside could teleport. But the question was this even possible? Ji Lacey estimated that Luo Ya's strength was probably at source level 5. This level was far from being able to use a transfer spell involving space. He could only use a special curse vessel. However, because Xia Luote designed a dress for Luo Ya, the young master of the Akut family could be said to be naked. He brought nothing except a set of clothes. Even if the Akut family is an adept family, do you think you can kidnap someone out of thin air? Ji Lacey didn't believe that there was such a bizarre thing in this world, and, what's the point? Although it was just a transaction, Luo Ya was now Xia Luote's fiancé. In this case, even if he wanted to do something to Miss, Ji Lacey had no right to stop him as a servant, so there was no need to kidnap him. Of course, there was another possibility, that was, Xia Luote kidnapped Luo Ya, but for this, how is it possible? Miss is such an elegant and skillful lady. How can she kidnap a man? It's impossible in the past, impossible now, and even more impossible in the future. The black-haired maid shook her head. After thinking for a while, the more she thought, the more confused she became. She looked down at the pendant in her arms. The blood-colored pendant was shining under the light, and there was nothing unusual. Xia Luote's life wasn't in danger. This was the only good news she could be sure of, but it didn't mean that there wouldn't be any danger in the future. There was another problem, and that was, she didn't know about Luo Ya's situation. It hadn't been long since the incident happened, so everything was still fine. After a while, the Akut family would come looking for Luo Ya. What could Ji Lacey give them? This was the Akut mansion in the main city of the Akut family within the Akut family's territory. The courtyard was filled with hundreds of guards, yet the Sorofia family had lost the only son of the Akut family. If the Akut family found out about this, Grace and the others wouldn't be able to explain themselves no matter how many mouths they had. The Akut family wasn't a large and prosperous family like the Sorofia family. In this generation, Luo Ya was the only child. Moreover, Luo Ya was the acting lord of the territory at the age of 10. He was the genius who led the Akut family's development by leaps and bounds. If Sorofia family couldn't find Luo Ya by today, this matter would definitely escalate to the heavens. Ji Lacey was anxious, but what she didn't expect was that there was a sudden commotion in the house. The moment the fluctuation of the curse power appeared, all the transcendents present were stunned. Then, they all looked at the door. Under dozens of gazes, Ji Lacey suddenly turned around, kicked the door open, and rushed in. "Miss G. Lacey shouted as she entered the room. She found that there were two figures in the originally empty room. Shia Luote's eyelids moved as the maid shouted. After a while, he gently opened his eyes. "This place is..." Shia Luote looked at the familiar ceiling of the gem necklace team's isolation room. She was stunned for a moment like a person who had just woken up, but then her eyes widened. She remembered what Luo Ye said before she fainted. "We're back." The red-haired girl just came back to her senses when G. Lacey rushed over. The black-haired maid looked at the exhausted girl after the battle and released a curse to check the condition of Shia Luote's body. However, she didn't expect that before her curse was ready, her miss had already struggled to get up. Luo Ye. Charlotte, who was now fully awake, looked at the unconscious youth beside her. Ignoring Grace, she immediately pounced towards him. As the young lady rushed to the youth's side, she remembered Isabella's words and hurriedly called out. Chapter 179. In the middle of the night, Luo Ye woke up from his sleep. At the beginning of his awakening, Luo Ye's consciousness was still very fuzzy. He felt that his body was very heavy and very cold. His undead ability blocked his sense of pain, so he didn't feel any pain. However, he was somewhat numb to his body. Therefore, when Luo Ye was unconscious, his sense of touch wasn't very sensitive. But even so, Luo Ye still felt a little strange. Every time the young man felt a bone-chilling cold and couldn't wake up, as if he was about to fall into the abyss, his lips would feel a little smooth and moist. Occasionally, Luo Ye would also smell a faint fragrance. Then, a surge of curse power would flow into his body like warm water, helping him suppress the bone-chilling cold. This scene repeated at least 10 times while he was unconscious. Every time, he would fall asleep again. In the end, his body even remembered this feeling. When the cold reached its peak, it would even cooperate with the cold reflexively. The unconscious Luo Ye naturally didn't know that he had unknowingly turned into someone else's shape. But strictly speaking, although the young man was fighting unconsciously, he wasn't at a disadvantage. Because every time he cooperated unconsciously, the young girl would be tormented until she was weak and boneless. After another strange touch on his lips, Luo Ye, whose body was much colder than before, finally regained consciousness. For the first time in a day, he opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, he saw a sky full of stars, or rather, an artificial sky. Gems, all gems, colorful and dazzling. From the white crystal, which was an expensive decorative material, to the purple crystal, which was worth far more than gold, hundreds and thousands of high-priced gems were inlaid on the ceiling, forming a galaxy. Under the sparkling light of this galaxy, Luo Ye felt as if his body had received some kind of blessing. He thought for a moment and understood that this must be the work of the Sorofia family. "It's really beautiful." The young man muttered his thoughts. After a while, Shia Luote, who was drinking tea to cool down, suddenly turned her head. "Luo Ye, you're finally awake." The excited young lady rushed to the bed and grabbed the black-haired young man's hand with trembling hands. Her eyes were filled with tears. Seeing Shia Luote, who was obviously much healthier than him, Luo Ye finally felt relieved. "Shia Luote, are you all right?" "I'm fine." "Speaking of which, shouldn't I be the one saying that?" "You're the one who's not fine." Under the moonlight, the lovely and moving miss was about to cry as she spoke. Luo Ye smiled bitterly and hurriedly waved his hand. "No. Actually, I'm fine. It's not that serious." Luo Ye recalled the fragmentary memories she had when she was unconscious. She blinked as if she had recalled something. She looked at the reddish-brown-haired girl and asked casually, "By the way, I don't know if it's just my imagination, but when I'm asleep, I occasionally feel a strange sensation on my mouth." "Huh." As soon as Luo Ye spoke, the miss body suddenly stopped moving. Under the moonlight, Shia Luote's face quickly turned red, but after a short moment, she forced herself to return to normal. It's a thermometer. I added a thermometer." "Oh, I see. No wonder." Hearing Shia Luote's reply, the young man's mind was still in a numb state. Hearing her words, he nodded. In this world, thermometers were hung by the mouth. Luo Ye had used it before. The last time was when he cooperated with Anna to pretend to be sick. Previously, when he was unconscious, Xia Luote seemed to be normal when she took his temperature. I'll have to trouble you. But please take my temperature. The thermometer is probably frozen. No. It's still quite hot after taking it. Miss Thermometer said as she felt her heartbeat. She stared at Luo Ye's lips and slightly tilted her eyes. Due to the side effects of the skill, the young man's brain wasn't too bright. He turned his head to look out the window and suddenly seemed a little confused. The scenery outside was moving. Did that mean the carriage was moving? What's going on? Xia Luote, shouldn't we be in the mansion? Where are we going? Look at the stars. We're going to look at the stars. Huh? Luo Ye asked in a daze. Xia Luote saw this and felt guilty, but she explained seriously. Your body's condition is not good now. You need to rest. Akate City is too noisy. We need to go to a quieter place. Oh, I see. That's fine. Chapter 180. The next morning, Luo Ye woke up to the girl's breathing. It was a warm, light, and fragrant breath on his neck. It was a little itchy, but it was also a little exciting. It was like a strand of cat's tail grass, constantly teasing the boy's muddled consciousness. Under this teasing, Luo Ye successfully came ashore and woke up. The moment Luo Ye opened his eyes, he saw a delicate and beautiful little princess. Xia Luote's body was currently slanted beside the black-haired boy. The two of them were sharing a bed. The girl's reddish-brown hair was scattered on the bed, and under the faint light, it formed a sharp contrast with her fair skin. Her noble temperament, coupled with her princess-like white pajamas, gave Luo Ye the illusion that he was looking at a sleeping beauty. Why is she here? The moment he saw Xia Luote, Luo Ye's brain temporarily stopped working. To be honest, this was the nth time that Luo Ye had slept with a girl. But previously, it all belonged to one person, and that was Ari Lisi. Rather than saying that they slept together, it was more like sleeping with someone to take care of a child. But Xia Luote was obviously not in this situation. Ah, right, it was Isha Bela's words about sleeping with someone. He didn't expect Xia Luote to actually take it seriously. Luo Ye smiled bitterly as he thought of this. He secretly sighed at how obedient Xia Luote was in front of the ancestors. She was clearly very mischievous when interacting with him before. This contrast was really quite big, but she was really beautiful. The black-haired boy looked at the pretty face that was more than 10 centimeters away from him and couldn't help but sigh. Normally, people couldn't withstand close observation, but this was completely ineffective on Xia Luote. The noble young lady was not only as perfect as a story from afar, but when played with, she was probably even more, ahem. After coughing twice, Luo Ye blushed and turned her head away. She felt a little ashamed of her own thoughts. Although it was the ancestors' order, Xia Luote had abandoned her feminine modesty to share the bed with him in order to save him. At this time, as the one being saved, it would be rude to have any evil thoughts. Mr. Luo Ye blamed himself in his heart, but his light cough caused Xia Luote to gradually wake up. The reddish-brown-haired girl opened her eyes, and the moment her blurred gaze met Luo Ye's, she became completely awake. Looking at the young man whose eyes met hers, Xia Luote winked playfully and revealed a teasing smile. Mr. Luo Ye, are you peeping at my sleeping face? Ah. No, I just woke up too. The young man explained with a guilty conscience, but Xia Luote didn't care. She looked at Luo Ye, got up, and approached him. As the young man's voice became softer and softer, she leaned over and kissed him gently on the cheek. Good morning, my dear. In the gentle whisper, Luo Ye was stunned. Xia Luote gently wrapped her arms around the young man's neck. Her luxurious body was only separated by a thin layer of pajamas, and her seductive body fragrance was like an aphrodisiac, causing Luo Ye's heartbeat to soar. What's going on? Luo Ye's brain quickly overheated. At the same time, he suddenly remembered something. The young man's gaze turned to the system, and his pupils suddenly shrank when he saw the record. Favorability plus 80,000 rich women are not only rich, but also have a lot of favorability. Lying under the starry sky ceiling in Xia Luote's bedroom, Luo Yue thought to himself. He felt that things might be a little serious. 80,000 favorability, this was something Luo Yue had never seen before. It was different from the usual favorability. Such a large amount of favorability basically represented a substantial change in the relationship between two people. For example, the Ari Lisi and Nuo Arya in the past were the best examples of this situation. But 80,000, isn't this a little too much? Although I do want to increase Xia Luote's favorability, but 80,000, the black-haired young man looked at the young lady who was mischievously poking his cheek, and felt that this wave of poking was a little too forceful. The suspension bridge effect was a situation where people mistook it for love during a special crisis. The accelerated heartbeat due to the danger would cause a young girl to mistake it for the person who was protecting her and going through the crisis with her, thus causing her to fall in love. The suspension bridge effect was a relatively common theory in Luo Yue's previous world. The people of this world naturally didn't know about it, but if one were to ask whether Xia Luote became like this because of the suspension bridge effect, Luo Yue felt that this was definitely a factor, but it should also be because of their marriage and Isha Bela. However, the suspension bridge effect would generally fade over time, so it didn't seem to be too much of a worry. Dear, what do you want to eat for breakfast? Anything. In the room, the young lady held her cheek with one hand and mischievously played on Luo Yue's face with the other. Her slender white legs kicked back and forth on the bed in a good mood. The smile on her face was filled with doting. Her innocent and gentle appearance had a unique charm of a young wife, causing Luo Yue's heart to palpitate. What's going on? Are you the wife that the country owes me? Fuck. Seems like it, oh. Chapter 181. At the breakfast table, a black-haired youth listened to the music in his ears and looked at the artwork on the walls. His eyes were filled with doubts about life and self-doubt. For so many years, although Luo Yue had always flaunted himself as an honest, friendly, and helpful person, he knew that a truly good person would not be able to mix well in the noble circle. However, if he wanted to benefit the group, he could not be a maverick. So what should he do? The answer was to put on an act. In terms of acting, Luo Yue's foundation was very solid. Whether it was a righteous messenger or a treacherous merchant, Luo Yue could act out them vividly. However, his confidence in acting met with a Waterloo here. Just now, on Xia Luote's princess bed, Luo Yue witnessed Miss Merchant's unique skill in acting for the first time in a long time. The red-haired girl did not give Luo Yue any chance at all. If he asked, she would say that she would complete the commission and go home to get married. If he asked again, her eyes would be filled with tears. Dear, can you not make such bad jokes in the future? Hey. No, You should know that our marriage contract was signed by our ancestors 100 years ago. It is sacred and traditional. How can I use it to make a deal? When the red-haired girl wiped her tears and said this, Luo Yue felt as if there were tens of thousands of mythical beasts galloping through his heart. He looked at the girl who had talked terms with him in the Akut mansion and felt as if he had transmigrated. No, how could it be? The youth who was almost fooled by Xia Luote thought so and quickly shook his head to calm himself down. He could not help but admire this girl's powerful brainwashing ability. Xia Luote did not admit to it and Luo Yue could not do anything. After all, the terms were mutually beneficial. Luo Yue did not think that there was any possibility of failure. Naturally, there was no paper document. It was a standard case of dead men telling no tales. Thinking of this, the young man shook his head and decided to look at something more meaningful, such as his own system. This trip to the historical fragment was indeed very dangerous. Luo Yue and Xia Luote experienced more than one life and death crisis, but the rewards were also very generous. The most obvious reward was the frozen touch skill, but there were actually other rewards. Rating: perfect, 115, Bloodline upgrade successful. You have received Bloodline, King Selection Blood, Silver, the Ancient Contract, the Broken Crown, the King is gone. The glory and prosperity are scattered. Your hands pick up the dust, surpass the boundary, and return the truth. When Luo Ya saw this new line of system introduction, he almost reflexively thought of the scene where Pei Taylor absorbed the golden curse power and soared into the sky underwater. At that time, Luo Ya's curse power had many suspicious points. It was obviously abnormal, and the new ability of this new bloodline seemed to be the only clue. It still doesn't sound human. Looking at this abstract introduction for a while, Luo Ya could only helplessly shake his head. He recalled the situation at that time and felt that it was very likely to be an enhanced skill, but as for how to do it, rub butterflies? No way, not to mention whether it was troublesome or not, it was too inappropriate for a man to rub butterflies for no reason. Luo Ya looked at his broken body and sighed. It would probably be a long time before he could personally practice it. After all, many bloodline abilities had side effects. If he accidentally killed himself in practice, it would be an unprecedented idiotic behavior. But in any case, the appearance of a new bloodline ability made Luo Ya very excited. The ability wouldn't grow legs and run away on its own. Luo Ya grasped it was only a matter of time. Besides the ability, there was actually a breakthrough that was also very exciting, and that was the bloodline upgrade to Silver. Silver bloodline and Bronze bloodline, although there was only a difference of one stage, the number of people who had it decreased exponentially. Although Bronze bloodline appeared in ordinary extraordinary families, they would also pay attention to it, but they wouldn't use all their resources to cultivate it. But if a Silver bloodline fell from the sky, it would be a different story. Silver bloodline basically represented the ticket to becoming a high-level extraordinary. Source rank 3 was a huge hurdle that all extraordinary had to face. Countless praised geniuses rushed all the way to Source rank 3, but then wasted their lives without making any progress. But Silver bloodline was different. The degree of mutation of their body was much higher than that of Bronze bloodline. As long as they worked hard, it wouldn't be difficult for them to break through. Because of this, once a family had a Silver bloodline, it was equivalent to winning the lottery. As long as there were no accidents, there would definitely be a powerhouse above Source rank 3 in the next few decades. This basically represented the prosperity of the family. So when dealing with Silver bloodline, extraordinary families would spend a lot of money. As long as they didn't die, they would spend as much as they could. Luo Ya had obtained a lot of things from this historical fragment. The Frozen Touch skill was very powerful, and the new effect of the King's Chosen Blood was also very amazing. But if he had to say what he valued the most, it would be the simplest Silver bloodline. This was because only with the Silver bloodline could Luo Ya truly stand on the same starting line as geniuses like Nuo Arya and Ari Lisi. For a long time, although Luo Ya's strength had always been ahead of the girls in one wave burst, his foundation was actually worse than them. The talent of Nuo Arya and the others was different from Luo Ya's. Instead of saying that Luo Ya had talent, it was more like looking for opportunities. All the gains depended on oneself. On the other hand, Nuo Arya and the others were more like geniuses. They could level up just by breathing. Because of this, Gulan Daya and Pei Taylor would always talk about those dirty topics. This was because Nuo Arya and the others were rare geniuses even in the eyes of the ancient gods. Of course, they were the best choice to continue the bloodline. Now, after going through so many hardships, Luo Ya had finally turned from a bicycle into a motorcycle. This kind of satisfaction suddenly faded away the little inferiority he had buried in the depths of his heart for a long time. It made him happy. The youth who was in a good mood leaned back on the chair and sighed. He turned his head to look at the bright sunshine outside the window. He suddenly felt that the world had never been so beautiful before. Chapter 182. They finally arrived. In front of the Ackett family's mansion, Nuo Arya Heathcliff was sitting in a luxurious carriage pulled by a frostwing horse. Looking ahead, she let out a sigh of relief. It had been more than a week since she received the message from Ari Lisi in the eastern region. During this week, Nuo Arya had traveled a long way and finally arrived at the Ackett family's mansion. Recalling the first time she entered the Ackett family's mansion a few years ago, Nuo Arya couldn't help but sigh. Who would have thought that a simple visit back then would lead her to meet a strange young man who completely understood her XP? Since then, the two of them had been in constant contact, confronting each other, going through crises, and supporting each other. Now, they had become two people who couldn't live without each other. Well, Luo Ya was still stubbornly resisting her XP, but Nuo Arya believed that under her persuasion, Luo Ya would be willing to cooperate with her one day. Yes, Nuo Arya was full of confidence because she and Luo Ya had experienced life and death together. Although they were independent and didn't rely on each other, if either one of them had a problem, the other would immediately rush to their aid. This was because their hearts were united. Therefore, Nuo Arya was full of confidence in this battle. Xia Luote was just a fiancé in name. So what if she stayed in the Ackett family's mansion for half a month? Had she ever fought alongside Luo Ya before? Was there a trust that transcended life and death? Was there a love that threw away all the fame and status and only looked at it from the perspective of a person? Thinking of this, Miss Angel revealed a proud smile and flicked her hair. The answer had already appeared in her heart. How could she? She was nothing more than a pitiful person who held on to the marriage contract as her last weapon. As long as she didn't have that marriage contract, she wouldn't be able to do anything. A smile appeared on Miss Angel's face. She already had a plan in her mind. While she was thinking, the gate of Ackett's house was getting closer and closer. Familiar scenery and familiar buildings. The servants of the Ackett family welcomed her in a timely manner. About 100 meters away, the Ackett family's courtyard was already opened for the princess. Nuo Arya sat in the car and decided to do some inappropriate intimate actions when he saw Luo Ya later. Nuo Arya intended to quickly enter the battlefield. The holidays in the eastern region were not long, and Nuo Arya did not have much time. She had to quickly and neatly get rid of Xia Luote, and then return to the battlefield with peace of mind. In order to resist foreign aggression, one must first pacify internal affairs. However, to her surprise, things didn't seem to go according to her plan. Someone did come out to greet them, but the person leading them was Anna. Luo Ya and Xia Luote were nowhere to be seen. What's going on? As a guest, Xia Luote might not be able to greet them in front of the Ackett family's gate, but what about Luo Ya? How could he not come out? Nuo Arya's blue eyes widened. Before her brain could react, the carriage had already stopped in front of the gate. In front of the carriage, Anna's face was barely maintaining a smile, but the worry in her eyes was almost overflowing. Recently, because of the pressure from the current head of the family, Ka Dia, Anna had cooperated with Ari Lisi and Nuo Arya's killing operation. Although the result was completely counterproductive, it had to be said that this time, as Luo Ya's personal maid, Anna felt a lot of guilt. Before Luo Ya reached adulthood, which was 14 years old, the command and control of the personal maid position was in the hands of the head of the family, Ka Dia. So at least for now, Anna had to obey the orders of the head of the family, Ka Dia. Otherwise, it would be the same as violating the military rules. She would be punished, and it was very likely that she would be removed from her position, and completely leave the little master that she had watched grow up. But it had to be said that this order put Anna in a dilemma. Even if Luo Ya didn't say anything, Anna's guilt and worry didn't stop. Is young master hating me? Every time Anna thought of this matter, she felt as though she was a mother who was hated by her child, or an elder sister who was hated by her younger brother. She couldn't sleep well night after night. In fact, Luo Ya didn't mean it at all. He was just being taken care of by a rich woman and didn't have time to see Anna. Because of this guilt, Anna didn't raise any doubts when Luo Ya went to have dinner with Xia Luote on the carriage 3 days ago. After that, they went out of the city to enjoy the scenery. But gradually, Anna realized that something was wrong. Although Luo Ya and Xia Luote's journey would be reported every day by Sophia's messenger, they had traveled further and further for 3 consecutive days. The journey was delayed again and again. Soon, they had arrived in the southern region and were heading straight for the Warren mountain range, which was the border between the two families. If Luo was a dissolute young master who didn't care about anything in pursuit of love, it would be fine. But the reality was obviously not like that. According to Anna's observation, although Luo was attracted to Xia Luote, he didn't have any special feelings for her. Under such circumstances, why would her cautious young master leave without saying goodbye or bringing along guards for so long? Anna was deeply suspicious of this, but she didn't have any way to contact him. Plus, she was Sophia's betrothed, so she couldn't say anything. Long time no see, Anna. Where's Luo? Nuo Arya, who had alighted from the carriage, immediately asked Luo's personal maid. Anna's smile froze and she couldn't help but feel anxious. Should I help young master cover up or tell her the truth? After hesitating for a moment, Anna decided to prioritize her young master's safety. She told her the truth and the uneasiness in her heart. As for Nuo Arya's reaction, Miss Angel was dumbfounded. She had already prepared her ultimate move, but in the end, Luo and Xia Luote were gone. Not only that, they were gone for 3 days. 3 days. What kind of dinner could last for 3 days? Miss Angel clenched her fists in anger. But after thinking about it carefully, she felt that it was indeed as Anna said. There was a strong sense of strangeness. Wait, did he bring the holy sword? Chapter 183. Luo felt that he had been sleeping a little too much recently. Ever since his return, Luo's body had accumulated side effects that had been affecting his condition. One was that he was often sleepy, and the other was that his body was weak when he was awake. He had completely turned into a weak and beautiful young man, but under the protection of Xia Luote, this kind of thing didn't really matter. Who could bully him when he was with Miss Luote every day? The black-haired young man shook his head after waking up and reached out to touch his lips. The slight feeling of discomfort when he was in a hazy state of consciousness still lingered. She must have taken his temperature again. Sigh, it's really hard on Xia Luote. The young man let out a sigh. He was touched by the young girl who always cared about his body. Perhaps only Xia Luote could persist in doing this kind of thing that didn't have any benefits. While thanking the selfless young girl in his heart, Luo couldn't help but think about his current financial situation. That day at breakfast, Luo asked Xia Luote to settle the balance, but it was said that it was a joint property. Asking for this sum of money was equivalent to admitting that they were husband and wife. This was Xia Luote's unspoken words. However, in the face of such a predicament, Luo didn't shrink back. Instead, he faced the difficulties head-on. Do you think this little trick can stop my determination to ask for money? Haha, too naive. If it was the old debt from before, Luo might have hesitated a little. However, this new loan to buy, Freezing Touch, was a terrible loan, 10% every month. He was dumbfounded, okay? Apart from Soroya, who didn't care about money at all, who could afford it? And in the end, Freezing Touch wasn't only beneficial to Luo. This skill killed the puppet master Daoj Lacey and saved Xia Luote's life. A skill that saved a life. With Xia Luote's net worth, 300,000 gold coins was honestly a bit too cheap. This amount of money probably couldn't even buy a few strands of Miss Luote's hair. In the end, Luo chose to absorb Freezing Touch in order to survive with Xia Luote. Otherwise, with Luo's personality, he wouldn't necessarily accept a skill like Freezing Touch that came from one of the 6 disasters. The price of extraordinary power was always a problem that extraordinary people had to consider. Ordinary extraordinary people often ignored this in pursuit of power, but the wizard family Akut was the most extraordinary family members, and Luo was even more. Between risk and benefits, he would usually choose to prioritize risk. In order to solve the inhumane system, Luo decided to be shameless, but he didn't expect Xia Luote to be so happy. She promised to let Luo use the money as he wished after settling down. Luo smiled and didn't take it too seriously. As Soroya's daughter, Xia Luote had a lot of wealth under her control. How could she let him control it all? But with this sentence, it shouldn't be difficult to settle the bill, so Luo Ye didn't continue to ask. Dear, you're awake. Xia Luote, who heard the sound and entered the room, saw Luo Ye get up from the bed and hurried over. With the girl's help, the youth moved out of the soft princess bed and sat in a wheelchair. Yes, this was Luo Ye's current treatment. Due to the exhaustion of life and the high level of immortality, Luo Ye's body was very weak. It was very difficult to stand and walk, and he might even break a bone. Helpless, he could only sit in a wheelchair. The wheels turned. This time, Luo Ye arrived at the gem necklace garden. Various potted plants released oxygen under the transparent ceiling, making Luo Ye, who was sitting beside a small round table, feel relaxed. Under the sunlight, Xia Luote's delicate face added a bit of charm. Her chair was still beside Luo Ye today, and she was gently cutting desserts for the youth. I say, we haven't arrived yet. I slept too much, so I don't know the time, but we've been walking for at least 3 or 4 days, right? Beautiful scenery takes time. This is normal, right? Come on. Ah. Luo Ye looked at the fork in front of him and was speechless. As an old feeding worker, Luo Ye had fed Ari Lizzie countless times, but being fed by Xia Luote was the first. The first time he was fed was in the morning. At that time, Luo Ye was even weaker than he was now. His hands had no strength at all, and he couldn't hold the silver spoon steadily. For a moment, he was in a dilemma at the dining table. Sensing the youth's awkwardness, the girl didn't say anything. She just silently pulled the plate over, and under Luo Ye's surprised gaze, she scooped up some soup with a smile and brought it to his mouth. Luo Ye remembered the gentle and virtuous appearance of the reddish-brown-haired girl. When Luo Ye helplessly sucked on the spoon, the girl's bright smile made his heart beat faster. But in the end, that was a few days ago. Now, Luo Ye's condition was better. At least he could hold the knife steadily, so he tried to take back the initiative. I'll do it myself. No. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.